Chapter 825. In the inner hall of the Yin-Yang sect on Mount Wuhua. This was a huge and spacious grotto, surrounded by mahogany shelves with all kinds of books and dazzling medicine bottles. This grotto faced south and was extremely deep. It was a cultivation treasure land that Jing Yuan had spent a lot of effort to find and build. Although there were many twists and turns inside, there was a hole in the front and 3 exits in different directions at the back. Could be said that a cunning rabbit had 3 burrows. The front and back of this grotto were ventilated, and there was a natural hole above it. This hole almost went straight to the top of the mountain, where the blue sky could be seen with the naked eye. Moreover, Jing Yuan had set up a sophisticated magic circle on the hole above his head, which could only be used to exit but not to enter. If he was attacked from all sides, the Yang spirit could escape through this hole, but it was impossible for outsiders to use the Yang spirit to sneak in and attack him quietly. In this grotto, there was also a very deep pit on the ground, which had been dug by Jing Yuan in order to refine the Hell Wuzhang enchanting jade. It was not only densely covered with magic circles, but also piled up with corpses and medicine dregs. The yin qi was so strong that it was like hell. Jing Yuan had spent a lot of money and time on this cultivation mansion. It was an excellent cultivation treasure land. Not only did it seize the magical creation of heaven and earth, but it was also a unique and ingenious place. When cultivators cultivated in this grotto, there was a cave leading to the sky above their heads and a deep pit of yin qi under their feet. It could be said that it was connected to the 9th heaven and the 9th earth. In a breath they could collect the yin and yang qi of heaven and earth. The Yin-Yang sect was a big cultivation sect in the Chinese cultivation world since ancient times. Its origin was extremely ancient and could even be traced back to the Yellow Emperor himself. When the Yellow Emperor asked Qi Bo about the cultivation method, Qi Bo asked him to teach the Yellow Emperor the art of yin and yang. This was the origin of the Yin-Yang sect. The cultivators of the Yin-Yang sect had a doctrine and an unswerving concept of cultivation, which was that the reason why mortals were weak was that they were injured by the intersection of yin and yang. This meant that the reason why ordinary people were getting weaker was that they were injured by improper behavior in the intercourse of yin and yang. Therefore, the Yin-Yang sect took this as their fundamental doctrine and proposed that the reason why the saints were strong was because of the intersection of yin and yang. Although only a few words were changed, the meaning was completely different. The cultivators of the Yin-Yang sect believed that since ordinary people did not know the art of plucking, they would behave improperly during intercourse, resulting in injuries to the kidneys, body, and mind. In the end, their essence, qi, and spirit would be depleted. Quantitative change would lead to qualitative change, and the strong would slowly become weak. Then, the sages who knew how to cultivate could use the correct method to pluck the yin and yang during intercourse. So what is the right way? Zhang Ding, a Taoist priest of the Yin-Yang sect in the Tang dynasty, had written a cultivation classic called Dongxianzi that had been passed down through the ages. This book was another classic of the Yin-Yang sect after the 8 trigram scripture, and it was still regarded as a supreme classic by the Yin-Yang sect. In this ancient book it was stated that of all things in the world, only man is the most precious. A man's desire is the most important thing. Lawful embodiment of heaven and earth, yin and yang. Those who understood the truth would nourish their nature and prolong their life. Those who were slow would harm the life of heaven and earth. It meant that sexual intercourse should follow the laws of heaven and earth, and follow the principles of yin and yang. Only then could one prolong life and strengthen one's foundation. This kind of cultivation method was originally the truth of the world, and it was human nature. The Yin-Yang sect used to be strong for a time, but as a big tree has withered branches, during the Wei, Jin, and northern and southern dynasties, the Yin-Yang sect once bewitched the foolish people in the countryside and raped them. For a time, the heavens were angry and the people resented them. The cultivation world rose up to attack them. Then, during the Taiwu Emperor of the Northern Wei dynasty, the Northern Celestial Master Taoist Ko Qianji initiated a reform of Taoism. He publicly abolished the sexual techniques of Taoism, and listed this cultivation method as forbidden. Anyone who cultivates this technique will be attacked by the whole world. After that, the Yin-Yang sect declined greatly. It was not until the Tang dynasty that the Tang people opened up and the Yin-Yang sect rose again. Only then did Zhang Ding write a book and publicize the way of yin and yang with the book Dongxianzi. For a time, the Yin-Yang sect was popular from the nobles and ministers to the common people. But unfortunately, at this time the Fox Zen school rose. This group of fox spirits learned the yin-yang technique, which was really like adding wings to a tiger. They became more and more evil. Many cultivators couldn't control the word lust. They lost their essence and lost their vitality, fattening the cultivation of a group of fox spirits, and they themselves became medicine dregs. Such behavior of the Fox Zen school naturally angered the cultivation world. Especially after the appearance of the mystical silver fox, the Yin-Yang sect also took a lot of blame. After the cultivators of the cultivation world drove away the mystical silver fox, they turned around and launched a counterattack against the Yin-Yang sect, killing many masters of the Yin-Yang sect. After the Tang dynasty, the Yin-Yang sect could not recover until the Song, Yuan, and Ming dynasties. First, the Jingyi school unified Jianghu, and then the Quanzhen sect rose. There was no place for the Yin-Yang sect in the cultivation world. Today this super sect, which used to be where there were cultivators of the Yin-Yang sect, had been reduced to a small sect struggling at death's door. Although Jing Yuan was old, he had always been ambitious and had always been eager to revitalize the Yin-Yang sect. Therefore he had been running this bleak sect. After decades of accumulation and development, he had dozens of disciples, had his own immortal mansion, and even refined the extremely domineering Hel Wuzhang enchanting jade. But all of this, with Ding Nan's killing of her master and seizing the position, everything had become a bubble. This was a great misfortune for Zheng Yuan, but it was a great blessing for an extremely ancient cultivation sect like the Yin-Yang sect. Although Ding Nan was a half-baked cultivator, she was extremely intelligent, and her intelligence was no less than that of Zhou Qin. Ding Nan took over as the leader and quickly eradicated the dissidents. After taking control of the sect's power, she immediately abolished the way of Yin-Yang double cultivation, which was criticized by her colleagues in the cultivation world. In fact, the reason why Ding Nan abolished the way of Yin-Yang double cultivation was very simple. Because she was a virgin, she couldn't stand this way of cultivation. Moreover, she was a proud and arrogant woman. Except for Li Yundong, if Li Yundong asked her to have sex with him, she would naturally be willing. But she didn't care about other people at all. How could she be willing to give her virginity to other stinky men? If they couldn't have sex, they naturally couldn't have sex with each other. But if the leader of the Yin-Yang sect didn't practice the way of Yin-Yang double cultivation, what was that? In desperation, Ding Nan had to learn from Ko Qinji's practice in Northern Way. In front of the disciples of the sect, she pointed out that although the way of Yin-Yang double cultivation could greatly increase a cultivator's jinqi, this kind of power came too fast and too light. Therefore, most of the cultivators of the Yin-Yang sect were frivolous and exaggerated, and the Niden in their bodies was not strong enough. When it encountered the Niden of thunder and fire that had been tempered by Li Yundong, it was really vulnerable. At the same time, Ding Nan announced that the way of Yin-Yang double cultivation was abolished and that she would re-establish the cultivation method of the Yin-Yang sect. As soon as this matter was announced, the Yin-Yang sect was in an uproar. Ding Nan had just taken office not long ago, but she was actually going to abolish the dogma left by the ancestors for 2,000 years? For a moment, there was a lot of discussion in the sect and people's hearts were wavering. Although Ding Nan was skilled and had made them all obedient, many people still wanted to watch coldly from the sidelines, wanting to see what Ding Nan would do. At this time, Ding Nan was sitting cross-legged on a futon. Her eyes were closed and her red lips were slightly parted. She slowly inhaled and exhaled. Every time she exhaled, a stream of white qi shot out like a sharp arrow. On the top of her head, the Baihui acupoint was opened, and a stream of white qi visible to the naked eye rose. This white qi went straight into the sky through the stone cave above her head. At the same time, a lighter white qi slowly descended from the stone cave, as if it was the qi of the 9 heavens that Ding Nan had drawn down herself. In the deep pit in front of her, there was a constant stream of dark qi coming out of the ground, as if she had drawn the yin qi of the 9 heavens from the 9 heavens. These two auras continuously drilled into Ding Nan's body and soon gathered together. The crowd saw that Ding Nan's body was shrouded by a mass of white qi and a mass of black qi. These two masses of qi were entangled and tumbling as if they were fighting. But not long after, these two kinds of qi slowly condensed into one and turned into a huge yin and yang pattern, slowly flowing behind Ding Nan. Many cultivators of the yin-yang sect were sitting cross-legged beside Ding Nan, including Alba and Song Guohua, who was most trusted by Ding Nan. The two of them stared at Ding Nan with their eyes wide open, not daring to breathe too loudly. They all knew that they were Ding Nan's trusted subordinates. If Ding Nan broke her promise and her disciples rebelled, they would also be in trouble. Therefore, whether Ding Nan could create a brand new method of yin-yang double cultivation in public was a matter of great importance to their safety. Alba had only cultivated for a short time, so she could not see the clues of the qi on Ding Nan's body. She could be regarded as a layman watching the fun. However, Song Guohua had been with Zheng Yuan for a long time. He was a dabbler cultivator who could recite even if he could not compose poems, so he more or less knew something. At a glance, he could see that Ding Nan had integrated the yin and yang qi of the heaven and earth into one and could control it freely. In particular, her body was emitting a faint golden light, as if a golden body had appeared. This really made him so excited that he almost burst into tears. Although he was a bootlicker who didn't want to have an awesome boss, who didn't want their sect to be awesome one day. But now Ding Nan let him see hope. It was the time when the spirit qi of heaven and earth was overflowing, and it was the best golden time for cultivation. The Mount Wuhua was clear and beautiful, and the mountains were like 5 dragons playing with pearls. It could be called a blessed land for dragons and tigers to achieve the Tao. Moreover, this grotto was a cultivation residence that Zheng Yuan had spent decades building. Ordinary people could not ask for it at all, so it could be said to be a favorable location. Ding Nan had absorbed the immortal qi of the Diuan Dan by chance when she was on the Tiandu peak of Mount Huangshan. Although she had cultivated for a short time, her body had already been recreated by the elixir. She was also intelligent and had a strong comprehension. She had long had the foundation and qualifications to soar into the sky. The combination of the right time, the right place, and the right people immediately created Ding Nan's amazing cultivation in the future. Although Ding Nan strictly prohibited and abolished the way of yin-yang dual cultivation between men and women, she carried forward the way of yin-yang dual cultivation between heaven and earth. She advocated collecting the yang qi of heaven and gathering the yin qi of earth, and placing the 2 qis in her own furnace to attack each other. She would then collect the yin to supplement the yang and strengthen herself. Although this cultivation method was not original, it was indeed the highest realm of yin-yang dual cultivation in the yin-yang sect. Although others understood the principle, they did not have the ability to cultivate it. Even Zheng Yuan could not do it, because he was not a body recreated by the elixir and could not stand the cultivation method of yin-yang dual cultivation between heaven and earth. But Ding Nan endured it and successfully broke through to the Jinshan phase. Although she could not directly place the yang spirit in the heavenly thunder to temper and absorb the spiritual qi of heaven and earth during the thunder retribution period, it was still possible to wet a small bath at the edge of the thunder clouds and take a small advantage. Ding Nan had successfully caught the last train of the thunder retribution and also successfully shocked her subordinates. When she finished her cultivation, stood up, and opened her bright eyes, everyone in the stone room had already prostrated themselves on the ground. In the past, they had shamelessly complimented Ding Nan and said, "Sect leader Wu Hua, your spiritual power is divine. You are the only one in the world." It was not that they did not feel disgusted, but in order to survive, they had to be thick-skinned and shout like this. But now Ding Nan had convinced them all. At such a young age, she could easily reach the Jinshan phase with the highest cultivation method of the yin-yang sect. This was really shocking. Jinshan was a realm that every cultivator dreamed of. Cultivating to this realm meant that a cultivator had the admission ticket to the thunder retribution. Although the position after entering the realm might be different because of their different cultivation, they were still qualified to face the heavenly thunder. Being able to survive the thunder retribution meant that this cultivator had the hope of becoming an immortal or a sage. It meant that a sect could rely on this person's own strength to revitalize it and carry it forward. In the future, they would no longer have to look at the cultivators of the big sects such as the Jingyi school and the Chuanzhen school. Therefore this time they were all sincerely convinced and shouted, "Sect leader Wu Hua, your spiritual power is divine. You are the only one in the world." At this moment, they all firmly believed that the cultivation world would undergo great changes because of their sect leader. Ding Nan was also looking at her hands at this time. She felt an unprecedented powerful force filling her body. This kind of power made her want to look up at the sky and laugh wildly. She knew that her cultivation had finally caught up. She finally had the qualifications to stand in front of Li Yundong and compete with him. She also finally had the strength to defeat Zhou Qin. "Li Yundong, I won't let you look down on me. You can hate me, curse me or hate me, but I won't let you look down on me and ignore me." Ding Nan suddenly clenched her fists, her eyes shining with ambition and excitement. "Li Yundong, I won't let you look down on me. I'm going to give you a big surprise. And, Zhou Qin, just you wait. I Ding Nan am coming. The Great Flood is coming. When I write the Great Flood, I will make up for the previous chapter." Chapter 826. Time passed by quickly. After the Spring Festival, the land of China quickly welcomed the 2 solar terms of spring and rain. After the Spring Festival, it meant that the lifeless winter had passed and the spring season, which was full of vitality, had arrived. There was an agricultural proverb in the central part of China. It said, A moment of spring is worth 1,000 pieces of gold. This saying was also common to cultivators. Although the spring thunder had not yet begun, many cultivators were already looking forward to it and began to prepare for the lightning tribulation. Cultivators believed that the spring festival was divided into 3 phases. The first phase was the arrival of the primordial bird, the second phase was the start of the thunder, and the third phase was the start of the lightning. Thunder was the power of heaven and lightning was the power of the earth. Thunder without lightning was not suitable for the lightning tribulation, because there was only the power of heaven and not the power of the earth. It was impossible to combine yin and yang, and it was easy to be struck to death by the thunder. Therefore, only after the 3 phases were over would the thunder and lightning strike from the sky, which would make it much safer. After the spring festival, it was the start of the rain. In the guide to the 72 phases of the lunar order, it was said that in the middle of the first month, the element of wood began, but the one that gave birth to wood must be water. Therefore, after the spring festival came the rain. Cultivators also divided the rain into 3 phases. The first phase was when the otter sacrificed the fish, the second phase was when the swan goose came, and the third phase was when the vegetation grew. In the third phase, the spring wind sneaked into the night and quietly moistened everything. Everything had begun to grow, and the vigorous rain from the sky moistened the earth. Therefore, the chi of heaven and earth merged and overflowed with spiritual energy. At this time, the thunder was ready to strike, and the awakening of insects came unexpectedly. In the guide to the 72 phases of the lunar order, it was said that in the second month, all things came out of the earthquake and the earthquake became thunder, so it was called the awakening of insects. At this time, the thunder was not as weak as the thunder during the spring festival, and its vitality was weak. The thunder at this time was astonishing, and each thunder was full of the power of heaven. Therefore, it could awaken the insects and beasts buried deep in the earth. At this time on Mount Longhu, Rumble, a bolt of lightning streaked across the sky. The sound of thunder rolled like a torrent, coming from the distant horizon and quickly moving to the far end of the horizon. In a small Taoist temple on a side peak of Mount Longhu, Zhang Lufang was squatting in front of a low and shabby stone step in front of the Taoist temple. She was supporting her head with both hands and looking up at the dense dark clouds in the sky. Lightning was constantly flashing and rolling in the clouds, and the edges of the clouds were illuminated by the white light from time to time. In the black roof in front of her, the rain was like a broken string of pearls, dripping down in a string, splashing in front of the stone steps, drenching her tube, but she herself did not notice it. Senior sister, senior sister. Suddenly, a male voice with a strange accent came out from the thunder. It was Hardadef who was cultivating in Mount Longhu. Since Hardadef had already become a disciple of Zhang Kongyun, according to the management of the cultivation world, foreigners who entered the cultivation world to cultivate must take a Chinese name. Therefore, Hardadef took the name he got from Li Yundong. Li Senator when Hardadef said the name himself, Zhang Kongyun and Zhang Lufang were surprised for a while, but after hearing that it was Li Yundong who gave the name, they did not say anything. He had chosen the right name. Hardadef was a person who lacked wood in the 5 elements. The name Li Xin only had 2 characters, but there were 4 wood in it, so it must be suitable for the occasion. When Zhang Lufang heard Hardadef calling her, she turned her head and saw that Hardadef, no, Li Sun was wearing a short, tight Taoist robe and a low Taoist crown on his head. When he walked, he was in a hurry. From time to time, his feet were caught by the Taoist robe and he could not move his feet. He was like a woman who was wearing a miniskirt and did not like it. He walked crookedly, which was very awkward and funny. Li Sun was a burly man, a typical Western burly man. Most of the cultivators on Mount Longhu were of medium build and were short. Especially Zhang Kongyun himself, who was a thin and shriveled old man. How could he have a loose and fitting Taoist robe? Zhang Kongyun had to find a Taoist robe given to him by the sect and give it to Li Senator. He asked him to make do with it first, and then he would make a new one for Li Senator. However, at this time, the Jingyi school was busy both inside and outside. They had to prevent the Shentian sect from seizing power, prepare for the thunder tribulation, and prepare to deal with the mystical silver fox. Any one of these 3 things was a big deal. Only a big sect like the Jingyi school could carry out these 3 things at the same time. If other sects wanted to do these 3 things at the same time, they would have to do it in a complicated way. At this time, everyone in the Jingyi school was so busy that they were kicking the back of their heads with their heels. Each of these 3 things was related to the survival of the sect. Who had time to pay attention to Li Sen, a blonde and blue-eyed foreigner? What's more, it was just a small matter of changing a Taoist robe. Therefore, Li Sen's matter had been delayed. He walked like a palace girl in a cheongsam and wooden clogs who had just entered the palace in the Qing dynasty. When Zhang Lufang saw Li Sen's appearance, she couldn't help but burst out laughing. She said with a smile, "Blockhead, why are you in such a hurry?" Before she could finish her sentence, she saw Li Sen suddenly stumble. His body slanted and he fell face first onto the ground. Fortunately, he reacted quickly and supported himself with both hands. He didn't suffer any injuries, but his expression and posture were very funny. Zhang Lufang laughed, raised her hands slightly and said with a smile, "Shirdi, you don't have to be so polite. Haven't I already given you a red packet? Why are you still kowtowing? Do you want more red packets? Hee, let me tell you, there's no way to do that. The landlord doesn't have any extra money." Li Sen got up awkwardly and patted the dirt on his body with both hands. As he pulled at his tight Taoist robe, he muttered in annoyance, "Damn it, why is this robe so strong? It won't break even if I fall." He originally wanted to tear the bottom of the Taoist robe to make it easier for him to walk, but no matter how strong he was, the Taoist robe did not move at all. Zhang Lufang smiled and told him that this was a Taoist robe specially designed for newcomers to practice. It was extremely strong and even had a certain degree of resistance to blows and swords. Other sects would not have such benefits, so he didn't have to be picky. Li Sen gave up the idea of transforming the Taoist robe and began the painful process of falling every day. He soon became the object of Zhang Liufang's daily teasing. Because his name had a lot of moon in it, and sometimes he looked a little dull, Zhang Lufang called him Blockhead and Blockhead. Blockhead Li said awkwardly, "Shiji, I don't want a red packet. I just want to ask you, what is the gathering of 3 flowers at one's prominence? Were they wearing 3 flowers on his head? Master is not here, so I don't understand a lot of things." As he said that, he took out a thread-bound book from behind him and looked at Zhang Lufang like a curious baby. Zhang Lufang patted her forehead and painfully said, 3 flowers on the head? Oh my god, you can really think. What is the 5 cheese collecting in mind? The 5 cheese collecting in renminbi? Dollars? You don't even know this. You are really a blank piece of paper. Although Zhang Lufang made fun of Blockhead Li every day, Blockhead Li pestered Zhang Lufang every day and asked her some very basic questions. Although these questions were no less than doctoral-level questions for a foreigner like him, for a cultivator like Zhang Lufang, they were simply addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division for a junior student. She actually had to answer him every day. At first, she could teach him with great interest, but Blockhead Li's foundation was too poor. She had to explain a very simple thing to him for a long time, and sometimes even when she was sweating profusely, he was still at a loss, which made Zhang Lufang so angry that she wanted to strangle this stupid blockhead to death. After a long time, Zhang Lufang felt pain when she saw Blockhead Li ask such questions. Blockhead Li looked at Zhang Lufang with a silly smile. He didn't know that his Shiji was annoyed by him asking such questions. He was like a child looking at a famous teacher, full of expectation. Zhang Kongyun was now in seclusion, preparing for the thunder retribution. It would be difficult for Zhang Lufang to refuse even if she wanted to, but she didn't want to talk to this blockhead for a long time. Just as she was having a headache, she suddenly thought of something and said with a smile, "Do you want to know what it means to gather 3 flowers in acupoint? Come on, I'll take you to see my eldest Shiji. She will tell you." Zhang Lufang, on the other hand, was thinking of a plan to divert the trouble and throw this guy to someone else to bother. Li Sen didn't know that Zhang Lufang disliked him and wanted to dump him. He nodded with a smile on his face and said, "Okay, eldest Shiji is very powerful. She must know." Li Sen had also seen Zhou Ping from a distance. He only felt that this eldest Shiji was not only beautiful but also strict. She must be a very powerful person. Zhang Lufang muttered in her heart, "She is not as powerful as me, but, humph, if you annoy her later, she will teach you a lesson for me. No matter what, I am your Shiji. It's not easy to deal with her. Later, eldest Shiji will do it for me, hee." She made up her mind, got up, found a bamboo umbrella and said, "Let's go, blockhead." After saying that, she walked towards the rain gracefully. Li Sen hurriedly put away the book, found a bamboo umbrella, and chased after her, shouting, "Shiji, wait for me." The two of them walked slowly along the mountain path of Mount Longhu in the early spring rain. After about half an hour, Zhang Lufang arrived at the Taoist master's mansion on the main peak. Although the weather was not good, the Taoist master's mansion was still full of incense and pilgrims. Zhang Lufang found a young Taoist priest and shouted in a crisp voice, "Hey Shixiang, where is eldest Shiji? Isn't she on duty today?" Although there were many female Taoist priests in the Jingyi school, Zhang Lufang was one of the most outstanding ones. Many of the male cultivators of the younger generation were in love with her. When the young Taoist priest saw Zhang Lufang, he immediately smiled eagerly and said, "It's you, Shimi. Eldest Shiji is not on duty today. It seems that she has gone to cultivate in seclusion with eldest uncle." In the Jingyi school, Zhang Ling's seniority was the highest, and Zhou Ping was her eldest disciple. Therefore, everyone knew that she was referring to Zhou Ping. Among the older generation, Zhang Kongyun's seniority was only higher than Wang Yuanshan's. The rest of them had to call everyone Shiji or Shixiang. Zhang Lufang was his disciple, so her seniority was also very low. As soon as Zhang Lufang was mentioned, everyone knew that she was referring to Zhang Lufang. When Zhang Lufang heard that Zhou Ping had gone into seclusion, she suddenly looked resentful and disappointed. When will she come out of seclusion? When she asked this question, she felt a little silly. She must have come out after the Thunder Retribution period. The young Taoist priest laughed and said, "I don't know. Why are you looking for eldest Shiji?" Zhang Lufang quickly waved her hand and said, "Nothing, nothing." As she said this, she turned around and whispered with a sad face, "What should we do? Who can we find to lead this trouble to her?" Muda Li, who was standing to one side, heard her muttering and hurriedly came over. "Shiji, what did you say?" Zhang Lufang was shocked, but soon she thought of something. She clapped her hands and asked, "By the way, where is Shixiang Tianhe?" Zhang Lufang was talking about Zhang Tianhe, who had once been the pride of the Jingyi school. After being beaten down by Li Yunyang and Xinxiu, he had finally lost all his arrogance and started to cultivate honestly. Not only did Zhang Tianhe have a high seniority, but he was also the direct descendant of Master Zhang. Wherever he went, people looked up to him, so he developed a bad habit of looking down on the top of his head. He was originally talented, and his understanding of cultivation was quite good. Therefore, when he focused on cultivation, he really made tremendous progress. He could still be called the leader of the younger generation of the Jingyi school. When the young Taoist priest heard her ask about Zhang Tianhe, he felt a little embarrassed and hesitated. Zhang Lufang asked curiously, "What's wrong? Is it inconvenient for you to say it? Forget it." After that, she waved her hand and said, "Then I'll go first." It was rare for the young Taoist priest to say a few words to this beautiful and playful junior sister. Seeing that she was about to leave, he quickly said, "Hey junior sister, don't be in such a hurry. I didn't say it was inconvenient." After that, he moved closer to Zhang Lufang, lowered his voice and said, "Shixiang Tianhe is now at the side peak. You can find him there, but don't tell him that I said it." As he spoke, the young Taoist pointed to a mountain in the distance. Zhang Lufang looked over and was stunned. "Strange, isn't this the peak of Shishu Wang Yuanshan? Why is Shixiang Tianhe here?" But she didn't think too much about it. She quickly walked toward the side peak. As she walked, she turned around and waved. "Thank you." Li Xin also quickly followed behind and shouted, "Senior sister, wait for me." His voice was so loud that the pilgrims next to him looked at him in surprise. Especially when they saw that he was a foreigner with blonde hair and blue eyes, their eyes widened even more. The young Taoist priest raised his head and watched Zhang Liufang's pretty figure disappear from his sight. After a moment of loss, he obediently returned to his position. Zhang Lufang quickly took Li Sen to the side peak where the Linggong sect was located. As soon as they reached the foot of the mountain, Zhang Lufang suddenly felt a sharp sword qi piercing through the air and fiercely stabbing toward her. Chapter 827. The sword qi was so fierce that Zhang Lufang didn't expect that she would be attacked in the territory of Mount Longhu. She was so scared that she almost couldn't react. But very quickly this sword qi swiftly flashed past Zhang Liufang's side, chopping down on the hard stone steps of the mountain path, cleaving open a crack on the bluestone pavement. Muda Li stared blankly, his mouth unable to close for a long time. "How dare you trespass the forbidden area of Mount Longhu?" A rough voice rang out like thunder, and soon a fierce-looking Taoist priest appeared in front of them like a ghost. Zhang Lufang took a closer look and found that she didn't know the Taoist priest. She stammered, Who are you?" "I'm not an outsider, I'm." Before she could finish speaking, the Taoist priest suddenly laughed and said, "Oh, it's you, Shernice. How is your master? He's about to undergo the lightning tribulation, isn't he?" Zhang Lufang asked curiously, "You know my master?" The Taoist priest laughed and said, "When I met your master, you weren't even born." Zhang Lufang blinked her eyes and giggled. "So you're my Sherbua? How should I address you, Sherbua?" The Taoist priest smiled and said, "You can call me Immortal Linghua." "Shernice, what are you doing here?" Didn't your master tell you that this place has been sealed? Zhang Lufang shook her head blankly. I don't know. Why is it sealed? Immortal Ling Hua smiled and said, It's none of your business. Tell me, what are you doing here? If there's nothing else, leave quickly. Zhang Lufang said, Is Xixiang Tianhe here? I have something to talk to him about. Immortal Ling Hua thought for a moment and said, Zhang Tianhe? How do you know he's here? Zhang Lufang giggled and said, I can calculate with my fingers 500 years in the future and 5,000 years in the past. Seeing her naughty look, Immortal Ling Hua couldn't help laughing. You little girl, you were naughty when you were young and you're still like that when you grow up. Well, I won't ask. He's in the cave halfway up the mountain. You can go in and find him yourself. Zhang Lufang was overjoyed. Thank you, Shibua. Then she waved her hand and said to Li Sen, who was a little nervous, Let's go, blockhead. Immortal Ling Hua's face suddenly darkened. Wait, he can't go in? Zhang Lufang immediately said anxiously, Uncle Ling Hua, he's also a disciple of our Jingyi school. Why can't he enter? Reverend Spirit Flame's face was ashen as he said, Those who are not of our race must have a different heart. Immortal Ling Hua's face was livid. Zhang Lufang was a little angry, but her face was full of pleading. She said pitifully, Uncle Ling Hua, he is my master's disciple and also my junior brother. You won't disrespect my master and your poor martial nephew, right? I Xixiang Tianhe Qt go in. Tiant he, Li Sei, Shan, I said, Zhang Lufang was beautiful and very popular, so Reverend Spirit Flame hesitated for a moment before sinking into contemplation. Seeing this, Zhang Lufang suddenly pulled Li Sun and said, Blockhead, run? Then she pulled Li Sun and ran inside. Immortal Ling Hua was so angry that he couldn't help shouting, Stop! Zhang Lufang turned back and made a face at him. She said with a smile, Thank you, Immortal Ling Hua. I'll treat you to dinner later. Immortal Ling Hua couldn't help but laugh and shake his head. This little girl? The corners of his eyes were full of love for the younger generation. Zhang Lufang barged in with Li Senator. She laughed all the way until she was out of breath. Her heart was filled with the pride of having done something bad. After a while, she arrived at the mountainside. She looked around and suddenly found a place overflowing with spiritual qi and sword qi soaring into the sky. Her heart moved and she walked towards that place. The side peak where the Linggong sect was located was extremely large. Could be said that two peaks were connected. One was the peak where the Taoist temple of the Linggong sect was located. The fierce battle between the Chinese cultivation world and the Japanese cultivation world took place on this peak. The other peak next to it was the peak where the Fengqin stone imprisoned Wang Yuanshan. Right now, Zhang Lufang was heading towards the mountain peak where Wang Yuanshan was imprisoned. She led Li Xin for a while and sure enough, halfway up the mountain they walked along the mountain path for a while. Suddenly, the willows darkened and the flowers brightened. In front of them was a huge stone cave. At the entrance of the cave stood two Taoists in their 30s. When they saw Zhang Lufang and Li Sen, they sternly shouted, Who is it? Zhang Lufang quickly said, It's me, Zhang Lufang. The two Taoist priests immediately relaxed their vigilance and laughed, It's Junior Martial's sister. As they spoke, they looked at Li Sen in surprise as if they did not understand why he was here. Zhang Lufang smiled and said, I'm looking for Tianhe Xixiang. Is he here? The two Taoist priests asked curiously, How do you know Zhang Tianhe is here? Zhang Lufang rolled her eyes and said, Uncle Ling Hua told me. The two Taoist priests suddenly understood. One of them smiled and said, So that's how it is. He is indeed here. Do you want me to call him? As soon as the man finished speaking, Zhang Tianhe's voice was heard softly. No, I'm here. As he spoke, a man of medium height walked out of the stone cave. He was handsome and had a smile on his face. The arrogance between his eyebrows had completely disappeared, replaced by humility and peace. Zhang Tianhe carried a 3-foot-long sword on his back. It was the 7-star sword, one of the 5 famous swords of Taoism. When Zhang Tianhe saw Zhang Lufang, he smiled slightly and said very politely, Little sister, what can I do for you? As he spoke, he saw Li Xin beside him, but he did not have the strong hostility of the others. He smiled slightly and saluted. Jinren Li Xin, you have time to come today. What a rare guest. After Zhang Tianhe came back from the Taoist assembly, he had witnessed Li Yunyang defeat several masters of the Japanese cultivation world on his own at Mount Longhu. He was extremely shocked and seemed to have changed into a different person. Although he used to treat people kindly, he always exuded a condescending arrogance. But at this time, Zhang Tianhe's politeness and easygoing attitude came from the bottom of his heart, making people feel like they were bathing in the spring breeze. Zhang Lufang saw this and thought to herself, Shixiang Tianhe suffered a series of defeats before, and I was worried that he would not be able to recover, but I didn't expect him to be a direct descendant of the celestial master. He was able to rise from the ashes and pull himself together. His cultivation is far better than before. Zhang Lufang saw that Zhang Tianhe was extremely amiable at this moment, as if he was not angry at all. She quickly realized something. That's not right. If senior brother Tianhe was so amiable and polite, then he wouldn't have taught this blockhead a lesson. Doesn't that mean my plan has failed? Zhang Lufang rolled her eyes and said with a smile, actually it's nothing. I just miss Shixiang Tianhe so I came to play with him. Can't I? As she said this, she took Zhang Tianhe's arm very affectionately and shook it gently. Zhang Tianhe laughed and said, yes of course but it's a little inconvenient now. Zhang Lufang asked curiously, what's inconvenient about it? By the way, what are you guys doing here so mysteriously? Zhang Tianhe hesitated for a moment, and Zhang Lufang said with a smile, oh, I'm hiding it from you. No way. I'm not an outsider. What treasures are hidden in this stone cave? Take me in to have a look. Zhang Tianhe thought for a moment and said with a smile, well Shixiang, you're a guest from afar. Come in and have a seat. At this time, the two Taoist priests who were guarding the cave immediately blurted out, isn't that a little inappropriate? Zhang Tianhe smiled and said, Shixiang Lufang is a direct descendant of our Jingyi school, and Li Sen is also a person who admires the teachings of our sect. What's wrong with that? I'm just taking them in to have a look. Zhang Tianhe was recognized as the next successor of Celestial Master Zhang in the Jingyi school. As soon as he said this, the two Taoist priests kept silent. Zhang Lufang was overjoyed. She turned her head and said to Li Sen with a smile, let's go, blockhead. Let's go in and see what these guys are up to. The two of them followed Zhang Tianhe into the stone cave. At first, the entrance to the stone cave was quite large, but the further they went, the narrower it became. Gradually, both sides could only accommodate one person. There was no light in the depths of the stone cave. It was almost impossible to see one's fingers in front of them. Zhang Tianhe walked in front of them. No one saw him move, but the sword on his back automatically flew out, buzzing and emitting a white light, illuminating the path under their feet. Zhang Lufang had seen the seven-star sword before, so she didn't think it was strange. However, Li Sen's eyes were fixed on it, and his eyes were filled with envy. Zhang Lufang saw his expression and was secretly moved. She was about to speak when she suddenly heard Zhang Tianhe say, be careful. As he spoke, he suddenly stopped in his tracks and turned around to greet the two of them. Then he leaped and disappeared from where he stood. Only the seven-star sword was still floating in the air, illuminating the way for them like a searchlight. Zhang Lufang took a closer look and saw that there was a huge grotto in front of her. It was the size of 3 football fields, and the road under her feet had been cut off. There was a high platform more than 3 meters high, and there were all kinds of talismans drawn under the platform. Must be a huge formation. Zhang Lufang was shocked. She looked up and saw that not only were the ground full of talismans, but the stone walls around the grotto were also covered with dense talisman marks. At the top of the grotto, she could faintly see a small hole, through which a faint light was shining. Like Ziyuan, Zhang Lufang was an inner disciple who had been cultivating since childhood. She knew a lot of cultivation knowledge, but she had never seen such a large formation. What is this? Zhang Lufang was stunned and stammered. Zhang Tianhe smiled slightly and said, Sister Shimi, just take a look. There's no need to talk about it or there will be trouble. Zhang Liufang's heart trembled. She jumped down from the high platform, stepped on the formation, and looked at each of the talisman marks in awe. Zhang Tianhe looked up at Li Sen, only to find that he didn't look at the formation at all. His eyes were fixed on his seven-star sword, and his eyes were full of curiosity and love. He couldn't help but look at Zhang Lufang, then said with a smile, do you want to give it a try? At first, Li Sen didn't realize that Zhang Tianhe was talking to him, so he was at a loss. When Zhang Tianhe said it again, Zhang Lufang shouted, Hey blockhead, I'm talking to you. Li Sen seemed to wake up from a dream and said blankly, What? Although Zhang Tianhe was also a cultivator, he was young and didn't have the deep xenophobia of older cultivators. He smiled at Li Sen and said, do you want to give it a try? As he said this, he controlled the seven-star sword to float in front of Li Senator. Li Sen couldn't believe his ears. He stared at the glowing seven-star sword in front of him in surprise and said, Can I try? Zhang Lufang pursed her lips and said with a smile, Blockhead, I asked you to try. Just do it. Li Xin gathered his courage and stretched out his hand to grab the 7-star treasured sword. However, he suddenly felt a huge force coming towards him. It was as if he was riding on a wild horse that was carrying him and leaping out. When the 7-star treasured sword felt that someone else was holding onto it, it immediately began to struggle frantically. In an instant, it brought Li Xin into midair and jolted him like a wild horse. In the blink of an eye, Li Xin was shaken down from midair. Li Xin let out a blood-curdling scream. Just as he was about to break his tendons and break his bones, Zhang Qianhe reacted quickly and pulled him back, allowing him to regain his balance and land on his feet. Zhang Qianhe smiled apologetically and said, "Sorry, I was careless." As he said this, he waved the 7-star sword with one hand, then pointed his finger and said, "Tut." The 7-star sword suddenly froze in the air. It no longer made a buzzing sound or trembled. Zhang Qianhe smiled and said, "Jinren Li Xin, why don't you try again?" Li Mutu was so scared just now that he didn't dare to try again. He looked timid. Zhang Lufang, who was next to him, saw his timid look and was so angry that she kicked his leg. "I asked you to try, so just try. What are you afraid of?" Only then did Li Xin dare to reach out and gently hold the hilt of the sword. This time, the 7-star treasured sword did not struggle anymore. It was like an ordinary treasured sword. Li Xin tried waving it a few times, as if he was a child who had obtained a treasure. He waved his hands and feet, gesticulating. Zhang Lufang giggled while Zhang Qianhe looked at him with a smile. Just as he was about to speak, they suddenly heard a loud rumble coming from outside. The sound was so loud that it shook the two people in the stone cave. Zhang Lufang exclaimed, "What a frightening heavenly thunder! Is someone going through a lightning tribulation?" The power of heavenly thunder would only be fully displayed when someone was going through a lightning tribulation. Zhang Lufang and Zhang Qianhe looked at each other and said in unison, "Let's go and take a look." The two of them leaped and ran outside. Zhang Qianhe was the fastest and he disappeared in an instant. Li Xin, on the other hand, didn't seem to notice as he continued to swing his 7-star treasure sword. Zhang Lufang jumped onto the high platform and found that Li Xin was still waving the sword. She couldn't help but laugh and say, "Hey Muta, let's go. Stop playing." Li Xin reluctantly stroked the 7-star treasured sword with his finger. He responded and quickly ran toward Zhang Lufang. But at this time he was a little anxious and unconsciously took a big step forward. Immediately, the Taoist robe under his feet pulled at his feet, causing him to stumble and fall forward. Li Xin's eyes and hands were quick. He stabbed the 7-star sword into the ground, and with a clanging sound, he used the sword as a support to stabilize himself. Zhang Lufang was scared and shouted, "Hey, are you okay?" Li Xin was also scared and turned pale. He stammered, I'm fine." He pulled the 7-star sword out of the ground. After he climbed up the high platform, he smiled at Zhang Lufang embarrassedly and handed the sword to her. Zhang Lufang didn't take it. She just rolled her eyes and said, "You can even fall like this? I really admire you. Let's go, we shouldn't stay here any longer." As she spoke, she muttered to herself along the way and quickly left with Li Senator. However, none of them knew that when Li Xin used the 7-star sword to support his body, the extremely sharp blade of the 7-star sword had broken a rune on the giant magic array. It was this crack that was less than an inch long that had caused a great disaster. Chapter 828. The mystery of fate lay in the fact that no one could predict what would happen in the future. Even Lu Guandao's stargazing and the Buddhist sect's destiny could not see through the mysteries of the heavens. Just like Wang Chongyang, the founder of the Quanzhen sect in the northern Song dynasty, who had passed the Jinshi examination and then the Wujinshi examination. He could be said to be a great talent who excelled in both the pen and the sword. He thought that he was going to show off his skills, but the corrupt officialdom at that time made him powerless. He could only angrily hang up his crown and become a chivalrous hero, looking for people to fight and PK. He was hated by the locals as Wang Baofeng. But who would know that it was this Wang Baofeng who met an immortal at the age of 48 and began to cultivate. 2 years later he built the Tomb of the Living Dead and concentrated on his cultivation. 3 years later he reached the pinnacle of cultivation. 7 years later he went to Shandong to preach and founded the world-famous Quanzhen sect. He then became a famous figure in the Chinese cultivation world and even in Chinese history. Coincidentally, when Li Yundong was also given the good guy card by one girl after another on campus, who would have known that this crazy loser would one day become a top master who would shock China and Japan? Who would have guessed what kind of realm he would reach in the future and what kind of career he would achieve? No one knew. The mysteries of heaven were mysterious and unfathomable by mortals. It was also because of this that John, an American man who had changed his name to Li Sen and was extremely devout in the art of Chinese cultivation, did not know that he had accidentally tripped and actually caused a fatal disaster. Zhang Lufang also didn't know that on a whim, she had brought her big-nosed junior brother here for a curious trip. The result was that she had stirred up a monstrous disaster for herself, and was almost expelled from the sect. Similarly, Zhang Tianhe, whose emotions had changed drastically, did not know that he had lent Li Sun the seven-star sword to play with for a while. Especially when he saw Li Sun playing with it when he came out of the stone, he hesitated a little and did not take the sword with him. In the future he had provoked the Jingyi sect and almost destroyed it. When Zhang Lufang ran out of the stone with her big-nosed junior brother, Zhang Tianhe and the others had no idea that there was a flaw in the formation in the stone. They raised their heads and looked at the thick dark clouds in the sky. Each of them had different expressions. Some looked excited, some were full of curiosity, and some had solemn eyes. Li Sun didn't know why they were like this, so he also looked up at the sky curiously. Zhang Lufang couldn't help but ask, "Senior brothers, is someone crossing the lightning tribulation? Which perfected master is going through the thunder tribulation? Is he from our Jingyi school?" Zhang Lufang kept asking, but the two young Taoist priests didn't have time to answer her. They were focused on looking at the clouds. Only Zhang Tianhe lowered his head and smiled patiently. "Junior apprentice sister, your master is undergoing his thunder tribulation." Zhang Liufang's eyes widened in surprise. Has he started his lightning tribulation? Zhang Tianhe smiled slightly and said, "Yes, it's time for the awakening sting. Every minute and second is worth 1,000 gold. Your master has already cultivated to the golden body realm. I hope he can successfully pass the thunder tribulation this time." As soon as he finished speaking, everyone suddenly saw a golden light rushing up from the main peak of the Jingyi sect. This golden light went straight to the sky and instantly disappeared into the thunder clouds. After a while, the thunder clouds were filled with lightning and thunder, shaking heaven and earth. Zhang Lufang couldn't help exclaiming, "Oh, is that the sect master?" Zhang Tianhe couldn't help but look a little nervous. "Yes, it's the Taoist master." Zhang Lufang clenched her fists and looked nervously at the thick dark clouds rolling in the sky. She couldn't wait to rush into the clouds and see how this top master was going through the thunder tribulation. While she was nervous, Zhang Tianhe said to her, "Junior apprentice sister, I want to meditate for a while. If you don't have anything else to do, can you protect me?" Zhang Lufang rolled her eyes. She knew that Zhang Tianhe was being polite and didn't want to drive her away, so he took a roundabout way. She smiled and said, "Okay, when you're done with the thunder tribulation, can you help protect me?" Zhang Tianhe smiled and said, "Okay." After that, he turned his head and reached out to Li Sen, saying with a smile, "Jinren Li Sen, can you return my seven-star sword?" Li Sen seemed to have woken up from a dream and reluctantly returned the seven-star sword. Zhang Tianhe didn't move much, but he pointed his finger at the seven-star sword. The sword immediately seemed to come to life and drilled into his back. Zhang Lufang watched Zhang Tianhe turn around and enter the stone room. She couldn't help but sigh to herself, "Alas, when can I also go through the thunder tribulation?" As she said this, she looked up at the sky and sighed, "I wonder how many people can successfully reach the thunder tribulation stage this time." As she spoke, she suddenly thought of Li Yundong. She thought to herself, "Invincible Li. He should be going through the thunder tribulation now, right? Can he get through it smoothly?" Boom! Another bolt of lightning flashed across the sky. With a loud crack, it was as if the sky was about to collapse. Everyone in Tianan City couldn't help but cover their ears, their hearts beating fast. At this time, Li Yundong was sitting cross-legged in the living room. All the electrical appliances and furniture in the room had been moved away, leaving only the cushion under his feet. The surroundings were open, and the windows of the living room and dining room were all open to let air circulate. The strong thunderstorm wind made the curtains rustle. In addition to Li Yundong, the living room was surrounded by people. Su Chan, Ziyuan, Zhou Qin, Lin Miao, and the little foxes of the Fox Zen sect were all looking at Li Yundong nervously. They all knew that this was the most important moment in Li Yundong's life. At this time, Li Yundong's eyes were closed, and he gradually fell into the deepest meditation. After a while, the yin and yang qi in his two kidneys flowed, and the yang spirit condensed little by little, forming a jinshin. Everyone saw Li Yundong's figure shake violently, and in an instant, a slightly golden Li Yundong came out of his body. It was his jinshin yang spirit. Li Yundong smiled and nodded at Su Chan and the others, who were worried and nervous around him. After a slight smile, his figure flashed, and in an instant he split into countless clones, then scattered through the two windows of the hall. Then he rushed straight into the sky and instantly drilled into the thunderclouds. The waking sting in the middle of the sky was not the time when the heavenly thunder was the most powerful, but it was the time when the heavenly thunder was the most alive. It was also the time when God was the most sensitive. At this time, if a cultivator drilled into the sky with the body of the Yang spirit, it would be like a thief swaying in front of the police station and shouting arrogantly, "Come and catch me." Therefore, as long as a cultivator flew into the thunderclouds with the Yang spirit, he would immediately attract countless heavenly thunder. As soon as Li Yundong drilled into the thunderclouds, he suddenly felt a huge force enveloping him. It was so dark that he could hardly see his fingers. Looking up, he saw a huge vortex spinning in the thunderclouds above his head. The lightning in the vortex was increasing and thunder was bursting. It was as if God was accumulating the power of anger and would instantly blast him into powder. At this time, the pressure brought to him by the heavenly thunder was far greater than when he had faced the heavenly tribulation before. Because the heavenly tribulation at this time was because the strength of a cultivator had reached an amazing level, he began to want to go against the heaven and challenge the power and majesty of God. This was definitely not something that the power of heaven could tolerate, so the power that erupted was far greater than before. Li Yundong only felt that he could hardly move. An extremely strong force in the sky firmly locked him. Even if he escaped from the thunderclouds at this time, he would still be struck by the heavenly thunder. Li Yundong saw that the vortex above his head was spinning faster and faster, and the lightning was getting denser and denser. He knew that this was the most critical moment of life and death. If he didn't go all out, he would definitely be struck into powder and never be reincarnated. There seemed to be a pair of indifferent and contemptuous eyes staring at him in the sky. The earth-shaking thunder seemed to be saying, "Who are you? How dare you challenge the power of heaven?" At this time, Li Yundong only felt that his blood was boiling, and the speed of the jinqi flowing all over his body suddenly increased. He pinched a Mahamudra with both hands and opened his eyes angrily. With a loud bang, he made a Mahamudra and blasted it toward the vortex in the thunderclouds. He shouted, "All methods return to the origin, man conquers heaven." When ordinary Jinshin masters underwent the heavenly tribulation, they were really trembling, cautious, and extremely nervous. They were in a purely defensive posture, for fear that they would waste a little bit of jinqi. However, Li Yundong took the initiative to provoke the heavenly tribulation. He regarded it as a battle with God. He thought that such a battle was very important. He had to have a firm and unwavering heart to win, otherwise the chance of winning was very small. If that was not the case, why were so many Jinshin masters still in the Jinshin realm and not the heavenly tribulation? When Li Yundong's Mahamudra first shot out, it was really shining with golden light like a missile, looking extremely huge and powerful. But after flying for a while, the Mahamudra became smaller and smaller. Especially when it flew to the center of the vortex, it had become like a small shining golden star in the distant sky, which was almost difficult to see with the naked eye. Then the Mahamudra was completely swallowed by the vortex of thunderclouds, like a stone ox sinking into the sea. There was no movement at all, only the sound of thunder was still there, as if it was laughing at mortals for overestimating themselves. Li Yundong's heart trembled. The silence and vastness of the sky made him feel an incomparably huge pressure coming from all directions. But he was a person who was stronger than the enemy, the stronger he would be. He quickly pinched a series of Mahamudra and recited the mantra. The Mahamudra, like a machine gun, shot out continuously. At this time, if someone was in this huge thundercloud, they would see a golden giant in the thundercloud blasting Mahamudra into the sky like a storm. These Mahamudra were like a series of missiles, endless like a golden silk thread flying straight into the sky. When this series of Mahamudra blasted into the vortex of thunderclouds, they were all swallowed by the rolling dark clouds without exception. At most, there was a burst of lightning, but there was nothing unusual. When Li Yundong's last Mahamudra blasted out, the sky finally moved. There was a terrible light in the vortex, becoming more and more dazzling and scorching. Li Yundong's heart trembled and he shouted, "Come on." He immediately pinched his fingers and pinched out the mighty Akalanatha Mudra, which could not be moved by the wind. At this time, there was a huge crack in the sky as if an atomic bomb had exploded. The earth was shaking violently. In an instant, countless thunderbolts in the thundercloud fell in the blink of an eye, densely covering all directions, making it impossible for people to escape. The dazzling thunder and lightning lit up the dark world, making people blind. Li Yundong's Vajra body was instantly swallowed by these countless thunderbolts and smashed into pieces in the blink of an eye. Chapter 829. The power of heavenly thunder was unstoppable. In the past, the mystical silver fox, with her peerless power, was also afraid of the nine-heaven divine night thunder. What's more, Li Yundong was only in the Jinshin phase, and he had provoked the power of heaven before. At this time, the power of heavenly thunder that broke out was really unprecedentedly terrifying. Li Yundong's Vajra body was instantly smashed into countless pieces, and hundreds of millions of clones instantly spread in all directions in the clouds. At this time, if a cultivator who had not comprehended the infinite void realm and had not comprehended the 10,000 methods returning to the origin was like this, it meant that this cultivator's lifetime of cultivation had been in vain. This person's yang spirit had been completely smashed by heavenly thunder and could no longer be restored. His spirit had been destroyed, leaving only his body, and he had become a vegetable. However, Li Yundong had already comprehended the highest realm of cultivation of Buddhism and Taoism. At the moment when he was struck by the heavenly thunder, he cast his mark of the true method on Su Chan, who was watching him nervously. This imprint was like a coordinate. As long as this imprint remained, no matter how much Li Yundong's yang spirit Jinshin was smashed or how far away he was, he could rely on this imprint to gather and reassemble his yang spirit. Li Yundong's yang spirit was split into countless pieces and scattered in the clouds of thunder and lightning, like countless fireflies floating in the air. At first, these fireflies were still floating in the air, but slowly they began to slowly fly to the ground. If there was a high-power camera to take pictures at this time, it could be clearly seen that when each clone moved, it would attract and pull the dense spiritual chi in the thunder clouds. The reason why cultivators could constantly strengthen themselves during the thunder tribulation was that they relied on the moment they were smashed to crazily absorb the power of heaven left after the heavenly thunder. In other words, the thunder tribulation was a process of destruction and continuous reconstruction. Jinshin being smashed was a serious injury for cultivators. If cultivators did not absorb enough power of heaven in the process of gathering and rebuilding, they would suffer a loss during the thunder tribulation this time. Not only would their cultivation not increase, but it would also decline. This was also why many cultivators who had reached the Jinshin phase would not improve their cultivation when they encountered the thunder tribulation period. Some cultivators had even gone through the thunder tribulation for more than 10 years, but they still could not improve at all. On the contrary, the more they went through, the more courageous they became, for fear that even their current cultivation would be reduced. Li Yundong was like a newborn calf that was not afraid of tigers. He was provoked by the heavenly thunder, which was much more powerful than usual. It struck him into pieces. However, the more powerful the heavenly thunder was, the stronger the spiritual chi it emitted, and the more power Li Yundong could absorb from it. Li Yundong's billions of clones kept flying out of the thunderclouds, and then flew toward his home in Tianan City. Everyone saw countless visible yellow dots fly into the house, and then quickly gather in front of Su Chan. After a while, Li Yundong's appearance reappeared. Su Chan, Ziyuan, Zhou Qin, and the others all looked at Li Yundong nervously, wanting to see whether he had lost or gained in this heavenly thunder. But when they saw Li Yundong's yang spirit body open his eyes, they were bright and clear, and he did not seem to be injured at all. They immediately felt relieved. At least Li Yundong was not injured, which meant that he had not lost anything just now. The little foxes cheered one by one. If it weren't for the fact that Chao Yi and the others had already been trained, they would have pounced on him long ago. After Li Yundong opened his eyes, he let out a long breath and said with a smile, "What a powerful heavenly thunder. If I hadn't comprehended the true method and true self, I'm afraid this heavenly thunder would have killed me." Su Chan looked at Li Yundong enviously. She waved her fist and cheered him on. "Come on, try to survive the thunder retribution today." Li Yundong reached out with a smile and stroked her head. "Well, don't worry." As he spoke, he nodded to Ziyuan and Zhou Qin, who were looking at him with concern on their faces. Then, his figure flashed and he quickly flew into the thunderclouds. After a while, thunder exploded in the sky again, and a bolt of heavenly thunder almost shattered the glass windows in the living room. Before long, Li Yundong's clone quickly appeared in the living room again. This time, the speed at which it condensed was much faster than the last time. As soon as Li Yundong took shape, he quickly flew into the sky again. Everyone saw him come and go more than 10 times, and each time he did it faster than the last. The Jinshin Yang spirit that he condensed was more dazzling than the last time. Zhou Qin's heart was burning with passion. She wished she could also be in the thunder retribution and have a taste of it. Ziyuan sighed in her heart. She knew that many Jinshin masters were trembling with fear when facing the thunder retribution. They were so timid that they were struck by the heavenly thunder and could not make ends meet. In the end, their morale was greatly reduced and they became Jinshin masters for the rest of their lives. They saw that Li Yundong was passing through the thunder retribution easily, but in fact, as an inner disciple, she knew very well that the thunder retribution could be said to be a process of suicide and resurrection. This process was extremely painful and ordinary people could not bear it. Just think about it, if you wanted to be struck into powder by the heavenly thunder, then slowly reassemble and then be smashed apart again. This was really a painful thing that made people hover between life and death. Just thinking about it was frightening. What if he was split apart by the heavenly thunder and couldn't gather again? What if he failed during the thunder retribution? But Li Yundong didn't have such a thought. First, he never thought about these things. Moving forward bravely was his style. Everyone watched Li Yundong being smashed by the heavenly thunder again and then reassembling again and again. He was like an army that had been defeated repeatedly on the battlefield. He was defeated again and again, but he fought again and again, indomitable and unyielding. Time passed by slowly and it was already night time. The power of the heavenly thunder also gradually weakened from the earth-shattering power at the beginning. It was as if the heavens, who had been angry for a whole day, was slowly losing its strength. The reason why the heavenly might was terrible was that its power was like the vast sea, unfathomable, and also like the vast sky, continuous and endless. However, Li Yundong had actually held on until even the heavenly might could not withstand it, which was really incredible. When Li Yundong condensed the Jinshin Yang spirit for the last time, everyone also clearly noticed that although the power of Li Yundong's Yang spirit had increased unprecedentedly, after Li Yundong woke up from meditation, he couldn't help but feel tired. His Jinchi and spiritual energy were almost exhausted by the endless heavenly thunder. Li Yundong only felt that he was dying of exhaustion. He could only reluctantly nod to Su Chan, Ziyuan, and the others to say hello. After struggling back to his room, he tilted his head and fell asleep on the bed. As soon as he fell asleep, the originally dry and exhausted internal organs in his body got a rest and began to slowly become moist again. His body had reached the highest realm of cultivators, and it could be called a perfect body. His internal organs were even more unbelievably strong. Therefore, as soon as he fell asleep, the meridians and organs in his body immediately repaired and recovered at an amazing speed. After only 1 or 2 hours, Li Yundong had recovered. After Li Yundong got up and opened the door, he saw that the house was extremely quiet. The room was also dark and empty, in sharp contrast to the living room that was full of people just now. At this time, everyone thought that Li Yundong would not go through the thunder retribution today, so they all went back to their rooms at this time. At this time, everyone also went into meditation, no longer watching how Li Yundong would go through the thunder retribution. During the period of waking up, every minute and second was valuable. At this time, cultivating in meditation was also twice the result with half the effort. At a glance, Li Yundong saw that no one was around to protect him, so he hesitated. When a cultivator was going through the thunder retribution, his body must be protected by someone. Otherwise, if a powerless person poked him with a knife, even a golden immortal expert would be killed. Cultivators could cultivate the Yang spirit to be indestructible or even invulnerable, but it was impossible to cultivate the body to be invulnerable. Li Yundong hesitated for a while, but then he heard a faint sound of thunder coming from the sky. It seemed that God was provoking him to continue the battle that had not been decided before. Li Yundong raised his eyebrows and immediately took out his personal powerful magical weapon, letting it help protect him around. He sat cross-legged and once again, the Jinshin Yang spirit soared into the sky and went straight into the thunderclouds. After a while, there was a loud rumble of thunder in the sky, as if a giant was roaring angrily. When Li Yundong didn't know how many times he had gathered the Jinshin Yang spirit again, he suddenly felt that there was a faint power of thunder in his Yang spirit. This suddenly shocked him and then he was ecstatic. The process of going through the thunder retribution again and again had finally made a qualitative change in him. From the Jinshin to the thunder retribution, there was not such a huge gap as between the Yang spirit and the Jinshin. Once a cultivator completed the transformation from the Yang spirit to the Jinshin, even a blind man could see the change in the Yang spirit. However, after the Jinshin completed the transformation to the thunder retribution, there was not much difference in the appearance. Only he could feel the difference. In terms of power, Breaking through from the Jinshin to the Thunder Retribution meant that the cultivator had successfully absorbed enough power from the power of heaven. Their Jinshi and spiritual energy had the power of heavenly thunder. From then on, they no longer needed to chant incantations to cast any heavenly thunder magic. They could summon it and send it away at will. Moreover, their yang spirit was more powerful, and their spiritual energy was more profound. They were masters who had been tempered by the power of heavenly thunder. Their explosive power and durability would far exceed that of ordinary Jinshin masters. When Li Yundong's yang spirit was once again in the thunder clouds, he looked down at the crisscrossing lightning around him and the vast land under his feet. At this moment, he felt an unprecedentedly powerful force filling his surroundings. He knew that he had successfully broken through to the Thunder Retribution realm. That night, the thunder resounded through the whole night. Many people in Tianan City were shocked by the amazing thunder and couldn't sleep all night. They didn't know that this city was about to give birth to the youngest Thunder Retribution Master in the history of the Chinese cultivation world. They thought that a terrible storm was about to come with the terrible rolling thunder. As a matter of fact, their guess was not wrong. After the night of thunder ended, a raging storm immediately swept across the land. Sorry, I couldn't stand it in the middle of the second update yesterday, so I went to sleep. I got up early today and finished the update. Chapter 830. After Li Yundong's thunder tribulation yang spirit returned to his body, he let out a long breath. When he opened his eyes again, he was surprised to find a girl lying in front of him not far away. The girl's graceful body was curled up into a ball. Her exquisite figure was curled up, and her black hair was scattered, but it could not hide her delicate and beautiful face. This girl was none other than Su Chan. When Li Yundong saw the little girl's sleeping posture, he immediately remembered that when she had first appeared by his side, she had also looked like this. Li Yundong couldn't help but laugh, then he walked over and gently picked up the little girl. Su Chan was sleeping soundly. When she felt someone holding her, she opened her eyes and took a look. When she saw that it was Li Yundong, she said, "Yundong, have you finished the thunder tribulation?" Li Yundong said softly, "Silly girl, why are you here?" Su Chan rolled her eyes and murmured, "I'm here to protect you. I heard that you got up again, so I came to protect you. Sister Ziyuan and Sister Zhou Qin are all in meditation. They are not free, so I came." Li Yundong couldn't help laughing. He pinched the tip of the little girl's nose and said, "Is this how you protect me? Sleeping soundly on the side?" Su Chan was a little embarrassed. She snuggled into Li Yundong's arms and said in a sweet voice, "I'm so sleepy. This weather is so sleepy." The weather was extremely humid during the rainy season. This kind of humidity was even more obvious for a person like Su Chan, who was born with a strong yin aura. It could slow down the flow of qi and blood in her body and make it stagnant. Since ancient times, many Chinese poems have depicted beautiful women in this rainy season, indolent and inexhaustible, rolling up bead curtains, delicate and powerless. The reason for this is because the more beautiful a woman is, the more lustful she is, and the more lustful a woman is, the more likely she is to be sullen and short of breath, listless and drowsy in the rainy season of spring. When ordinary women are tired and want to sleep, they can just be dismissed as lazy women. But when beautiful women, especially beautiful women, show a lazy posture after sleeping, they really have a soft and beautiful feeling like a begonia sleeping in the spring, and being supported by a man who is weak and delicate. Li Yundong saw that Su Chan's face was still full of sleep, but she forced herself to talk to him. He couldn't help but say lovingly, "If you're sleepy, go back to your room to sleep." At this time the little girl also slowly became more awake. She arched her head in Li Yundong's arms, looked up and smiled. "I'm fine, I'm not sleepy anymore. You continue to go through the thunder tribulation. I'll protect you. I'm sorry just now you found me sleeping secretly." Li Yundong laughed and said, "I've already finished. Don't be silly, go back to sleep quickly." Su Chan was stunned for a moment, then overjoyed. She couldn't help but want to exclaim loudly, but then she remembered that Zhou Qin, Ziyuan, and the others were all cultivating in their respective rooms. If she shouted at this time, she would definitely disturb them. Su Chan immediately lowered her voice and said with excitement and joy, "Yundong, have you passed the thunder tribulation?" Li Yundong smiled and said, "Not completely. I just crossed the first thunder retribution and entered the thunder retribution realm. I'll try to cross the second thunder retribution tomorrow." Su Chan put her arms around Li Yundong's waist happily and said with a smile, "Well, you're amazing. You reached the Thunder Retribution realm in just one day. I know that many people in the cultivation world have been undergoing Thunder Retribution for a long time before breaking through. Li Yundong looked at the little girl playfully and said with a smile, "Of course. Don't you see who is guarding me? How can I not be fast?" Su Chan knew that Li Yundong was making fun of her. She pulled a face at Li Yundong in embarrassment. "I didn't do it on purpose," she said. "I promise I won't be sleepy again tomorrow." Li Yundong knew that the little girl loved to sleep, and when she was sleepy, nothing could stop her from falling asleep. He smiled and said, "Well, I'm just teasing you. Now go back to sleep. It's so comfortable to sleep on the bed." Su Chan rolled her eyes and refused to let go of him. "I want to sleep with you," she said, refusing to let go of him. These days the two of them had been spending almost every night together. Li Yundong had also become accustomed to the little girl sleeping beside him every night. He chuckled, picked up the little girl and walked towards his bedroom. After entering the room, the little girl rolled down from Li Yundong's arms and rolled on the bed. She giggled and said, "It's more comfortable to sleep here." As she spoke, she rolled around on the bed with a pillow in her arms. After a while the bed was wrinkled. Li Yundong couldn't help laughing. "Hey, how old are you? Why are you still rolling on the bed? After all, you are a seven-tailed fox spirit, which is equivalent to a cultivator at the top phase of the Yang spirit realm. You are only one step away from the Jinshin realm. Who would believe that you look like this?" Li Yundong was just making fun of her casually. The speaker didn't mean it, but the listener took it seriously. The little girl sat up with a pillow in her arms. She knelt beside the bed and stopped moving. She said with a bitter face, "Sister Ziyuan and Sister Zhou are now masters of the Jinshin realm, but I'm still in the Yang spirit realm. I'm still in the Yangshin phase. If I hadn't absorbed the Diuan Jin Dan, I would still be a three-tailed fox spirit." Cultivation had always been a sore point for Su Chan. The little girl was young and her willpower was shallow. With Li Yundong in her heart, she had been unable to concentrate on cultivation. Although she had studied hard for a while, it was just a last-minute practice after all. It couldn't make her have a fundamental change. At the moment she was watching Ziyuan and Zhou Qin go through the thunder tribulation, but as the closest person to Li Yundong she could only watch helplessly. No matter how insensitive she was, her heart was full of discomfort. Seeing her looking at him pitifully, Li Yundong smiled and said, "If you had worked as hard as they did, I'm afraid you would have been an eight-tailed fox long ago. Maybe they would have been the ones envious of you." Su Chan pouted and said unhappily, "You're so annoying. You have to compensate me. It's all your fault. As soon as I was in meditation, you came to disturb me. You made my cultivation stagnate." Li Yundong asked curiously, "How did I disturb you? I'm not around most of the time when you are in meditation." Su Chan made a face at Li Yundong and said, "Of course not. As soon as I was in meditation, you ran into my heart and mind, making me unable to feel at ease. Tell me, don't you hate me? Why do I only care about liking you?" Li Yundong couldn't help laughing. He held the little girl in his arms and coaxed her as if she were a child. Well, I'm sorry, little girl. Don't be angry. I'll make it up to you, okay?" The little girl giggled, her eyes rolling, and said, "How do you want to compensate me?" Li Yundong saw that the little girl was born to be charming. There were countless romantic feelings in her eyes, and the corners of her mouth were always full of charm. In particular, when the little girl's eyes moved, she looked at him affectionately. The seductive eyes at the corners of her eyes were really very attractive, and it made people want to have sex. But the most irresistible thing was that Su Chan had no intention of seduction, so the corners of her eyes and mouth were full of seduction. Her whole body was full of charm, but her eyes were full of purity and innocence, without the slightest emotion. This charming and lovely person had such a look in her eyes. This was really a kind of fatal poison. Even Lu Xiaohui couldn't control himself. He clearly knew that this was a strong poison, but he still wanted to drink it in one gulp for the sake of pleasure. Li Yundong's heart skipped a beat. He held the little girl in his arms, kissed her lips and said with a smile, "You have to pay your debt, okay? I'll devote myself to you. Is that okay?" Su Chan also giggled. Her little tongue gently licked the corner of her pink and tender lips, and she giggled and said, "No, it seems that I'm the one who is at a disadvantage." If Li Yundong had not cultivated to a high level, this little girl was indeed the biggest poison in the world. As the saying goes, sex is like a bone scraper. Although one sexual encounter was not enough to make a person weak, or from prosperity to decline, it was not enough. But when it comes to women, the scariest thing is when the man is unaware, bit by bit, the most precious thing on a man's body. The first sentence of Jean Ping Mate quoted a poem written by Lu Dongbin. The body of a beautiful woman in her 20s is soft, and the sword at the waist beheads the fool. Obviously no head falls, but secretly the bones of the monarch are dry. This sentence showed the harm of beauty to people. Su Chan was about 16 years old, which was the beautiful age of the body of a beautiful woman in her 20s is soft. Looking at her soft and slender waist, Li Yundong really felt that there was a sharp sword hidden in it. If it had been another man, he might have cut off a big head without making a sound. But Li Yundong was not an ordinary man after all. He had already cultivated to the Jinshin phase. The strength of his Naiden, the stability of his Qi, and the stability of his Jinshi were rare at that time. Perhaps only the mystical silver fox with the mystical destiny who had recovered her full strength could compare with him. If he had sex with Su Chan, he would not be worried about Li Yundong, but Su Chan would be worried that Li Yundong would take away her Yuanin. Hearing what the little girl said, Li Yundong smiled and whispered in her ear, "Don't worry, I will be very gentle. I won't let you suffer." Su Chan only felt that he was speaking in her ear, and a gust of hot air blew over, making her ears soft and itchy. Her heart was warm and her belly was also hot. She felt weaker and weaker all over. She knew that her master was in love at this time and wanted to have sex with her. The little girl also felt warm in her heart. She raised her eyes and looked at Li Yundong, only to see that he was staring at her, his eyes full of tenderness and love. She suddenly thought of the little things she had been with Li Yundong, of his love and single-mindedness for her, and of the joys and sorrows she had experienced with him. She couldn't help but be extremely moved. She thought to herself, "Yundong is so good to me. If he wants me, then I will give it to him." Thinking of this, the little girl's body was hot all over. With a moan, she raised her head and took the initiative to kiss Li Yundong, entangling with his tongue. The little girl is going to be pushed down. Chapter 831. The two of them kissed for a long time before their lips parted. Li Yundong couldn't help but laugh when he saw that there was still a trace of crystal at the corner of the girl's mouth. He reached out and wiped the corner of the girl's mouth with a smile. At this time the girl was extremely shy. Seeing Li Yundong laugh, she thought that he was laughing at her, so she plunged into Li Yundong's arms and said angrily, "You're so annoying. You're laughing at me?" As soon as she lowered her head, she saw that Li Yundong had set up a small tent, which was very high. She pouted and reached out to grab it. "That's what you get for laughing at me." At this time, Li Yundong's abdomen was really as hard as a Vajra pestle. He only felt that there was an invulnerable golden body in front of him, and he was afraid that it would be smashed by his pestle. Being touched by the little girl's soft and slender hand, Li Yundong suddenly sucked in a breath of cold air. Like a raging flame meeting oil, it burned more and more vigorously. Seeing Li Yundong raise his head and take a deep breath, the girl couldn't help but laugh and say with great pride, "Hee, let's see if you can still laugh at me." After taking a deep breath, Li Yundong pretended to be angry and glared at her. "Little girl, you're naughty. You're happy to see me in pain." Su Chan's eyes sparkled and she giggled. She flipped her hair behind her ear and gave him a playful and charming wink. Then she lowered her head and went back to sleep. Even though Li Yundong had the strength of King Kong, he couldn't help but tremble. Countless thunderbolts seemed to explode in his mind, and the billions of cells in his body seemed to be shouting with joy. The little girl loved her lover to the extreme. In order to please him, she did not hesitate to use a lot of romantic means. Li Yundong saw that she was busy, and her little head was like a chicken pecking rice. He couldn't help but pull her up and said with a smile, "Well, don't be busy. Today I'm making it up to you." The little girl saw that Li Yunyang was like a 9-patterned coiling dragon pillar. Not only did it soar into the sky, but it also had blue veins protruding from its surface. It looked extremely terrifying. She couldn't help but be frightened and secretly feel timid. She secretly glanced at the thing and said with fear on her face, "Master, I'm a little scared. I'll help you out, okay?" He had read countless Japanese blockbusters. It could be said that he had already cultivated to the realm of reading all the AV movies in the world. His eyes were filled with code, and his heart was filled with desire. As the saying goes, if you are familiar with 300 Tang poems, you won't know how to write obscene poems. Even if you don't know how to recite poems, you can still recite poems. He had read a lot of them in his daily life, so when he really went to the battlefield he was naturally skilled. Since ancient times, men and women were the same. When a man's sperm went to the brain, his qi and blood would boil, and the qi of the liver and kidney would intersect, causing the qi of the lower dantian in the lower abdomen to break through the huagai acupoint and go straight to the shinting acupoint in the brain. This would cause the qi of the upper dantian in the brain to be chaotic, and his IQ would be terrifyingly low. Sometimes, for the sake of lust, men would even do all kinds of stupid things. Killing and arson were not a problem. This was the reason why people were so bold. In the same way, when a woman was aroused by lust, she would also have such a performance. Since ancient times, how many women who couldn't keep their loneliness colluded with outsiders and turned around to harm their original partners? Wasn't it all for the sake of being together with her lover, so that the two of them could be together for a long time and be happy in the future? Li Yundong smiled slightly, held the little girl's face, looked at her gently and said softly, "Chaner, I'm here." Su Chan looked at Li Yundong with blurred eyes and nodded gently. Although Li Yundong's cultivation was far higher than Su Chan's, Su Chan was, after all, a demon fox, and the fox was the most yin in the world. It was born to attract and even restrain men. Chapter 833. Although the process was a little thrilling, Su Chan successfully completed the transformation from a girl to a woman. At this moment, her unique charm and enchanting vixen were fully revealed. Even if Li Yundong was a bronze Vajra or an iron Luohan, he would still become soft in front of this peerless enchanting woman. Even a living Buddha with strong willpower would not be able to withstand it. What's more, Li Yundong and Su Chan were in love with each other. Although they had just finished the battle, after the exchange of their yin and yang qi, they had both benefited. The Jinqi in their bodies was boiling, and it was even stronger than before. Although Li Yundong had opened his qi and handed over his virgin yuan yang qi, he had also obtained Su Chan's virgin yuan yang qi. Although the quality was not equal, the combination of the supreme yin and the supreme yang qi in the world was really like a dragon and a tiger, and water and ice were melted. Li Yundong's body suddenly underwent earth-shaking changes. At this time, his qi and blood were surging, and the beautiful woman in front of him was so active and charming. How could he bear it? He only let Su Chan sit on his body for a while, and then he got on the horse again and whipped. At this time both of them had experience, so they each guarded their qi. It was not until both of them were about to explode that they tacitly handed over their yuanjing to each other. This time the yuanyang qi in Li Yundong's body completely merged with Su Chan's yuanyang qi. Solitary yang did not last long, and it was easy to break when it was hard. This referred to the fact that although the yang qi in a man's body was strong and explosive, it was because it was too strong that this power could not last long. The so-called good is like water. Although it was the softest thing in the world, dripping water could wear through a stone. The precious thing was perseverance. Chu Ba-Wang could lift 1,000 kilograms, but if he was asked to lift a weapon weighing 10 kilograms for a few hours without moving, he would not be able to do it even if he was killed. It could be seen that the most difficult thing about holding strength was endurance. Li Yundong's explosive power and endurance were among the best in the cultivation world, but he also knew that the last time he fought against the leader of the Tiantai sect, Imagawa Kagumo, who was in the Thunder Retribution realm, he had a big advantage. Firstly, Imagawa Kagumo's cauldron was decaying and his physical body was old. He was already at the age of an old steed in the stable. On the other hand, he was still young and his cauldron was full of vigor. He was at the age of a newborn calf. Secondly, Imagawa Kagumo had been severely injured previously. Otherwise he would not have coughed up blood and died in a battle. Compared to the golden body, the thunder tribulation was stronger in terms of endurance. Just think about it, a person could persevere under the continuous strikes of the heavenly thunder, but he couldn't persevere in a fight with mortals. What kind of logic was this? Therefore, Li Yundong knew that if Imagawa Kagumo fought with him without any injuries, he would probably be in danger. Even if he was young and full of vigor, it would be as difficult as ascending to heaven to exhaust the Jinqi of the other party in the Thunder Tribulation realm. At this time, Li Yundong's body had Su Chan's Yuanin Qi. It was like a man and a woman combining. From then on, yin and yang could intersect and give birth to a new life. When the two qis in Li Yundong's body intersected, they could produce yin and yang. From then on, the qi in his body would be endless and continuous. The same was true for Su Chan. She only felt that her body was extremely hot, as if there was lava rolling through her meridians. After the second time with Li Yundong, she finally couldn't withstand the steaming attack of the yang qi in her body and fell into a deep sleep. On the other hand, Li Yundong sat cross-legged and meditated, completely digesting the Yuanyin qi in his body. The two of them could be said to have taken what they needed. From now on, Li Yundong's spiritual power and Jinqi had a lasting power. With his explosive power, this would undoubtedly make his strength achieve an astonishing breakthrough. After she fell asleep, the Jinqi in her body surged, and she unconsciously revealed her fox body. Her whole body was covered with fiery red soft fur, and her 7 fox tails were constantly wriggling. After a while, the 8th tail grew out, and the 8th tail was the same color as the middle tail. They were both golden. Even the little girl herself didn't know that after she and Li Yundong had sex and cultivated together, she had broken through the biggest bottleneck of fox cultivation in one fell swoop. She had jumped from 7 tails to 8 tails. In fact, she was not the first fox spirit in the world to benefit greatly from sexual techniques. Before her, there was an old senior of the Fox Zen school, the mystical silver fox, who had set an example in this regard. The mystical silver fox's spiritual power and cultivation had made a qualitative leap. It was all because Zen master Huifa had saved her from the edge of Qigong deviation with his boy Yuanyang body. Although the two of them had met by chance, the mystical silver fox had obtained the boy Yuanyang qi of Zen master Huifa. From then on, the yin and yang qi in her body had merged and Buddhism and Taoism had merged. Since then, her spiritual power and Jinqi had been endless and vast. When she had completely passed through the thunder tribulation and cultivated to the golden immortal realm, her strength had far surpassed that of ordinary golden immortals, and she had become a monster that others in the cultivation world could not reach. Of course, if it was just the boy Yuanyang qi of an ordinary boy, it would be fine. However, Huifa was the reincarnation of Manjushri Bodhisattva. His boy Yuanyang qi was no worse than that of Xuanzang. When Xuanzang went to the west to seek scriptures, how many demons and ghosts wanted to eat his flesh and how many female demons wanted to have sex with him? Could it be that these female demons only valued Xuanzang's handsome appearance? Don't be kidding. When it came to cultivation, could being handsome be eaten? Xuanzang was one of the greatest translators of Han Buddhism in China. Moreover, compared with Huifa, the rarest thing about him was that he was neither the reincarnation of living Buddha nor the reincarnation of Bodhisattva. He was just an ordinary mortal. His original name was Qin Zhao. When he was young, he became a monk because his family was in difficulty and he could not make a living. Tang Sanzang was famous in Qingdu in China during the Sui dynasty. When he was 22 years old, he went to Jingzhou to preach Buddhism, attracting famous monks from the Huaihai area to gather and listen to his lectures devoutly. Even the 60-year-old eminent monk Zhi Yan was very respectful to him. When he was 25 years old, Xuanzang traveled around Chang'an and studied all kinds of theories. His talent was so great that it shook Chang'an. Such an eminent monk, his boy Yuanyang was really a treasure that could not be bought with money. It was not enough to describe it as priceless. He was going to the west to seek scriptures. Which female cultivator would not be envious and which female demon would not be shocked? If she absorbed his boy Yuanyang, she could really save dozens of years of cultivation. Huifa was born at the end of the Tang dynasty, but he was the reincarnation of Manjushri Bodhisattva. His talent was even higher than Xuanzang's. Therefore, after his boy Yuanyang was taken away by the mystical silver fox, he immediately created an almost unbeatable monster in the world. Li Yunyang was the reincarnation of the immovable wisdom king. In terms of profound knowledge and comprehension of Buddhist scriptures, he might not be as good as Xuanzang and Huifa, but in terms of spiritual power cultivation and Yuanyang, he was far better than the two of them. Therefore, as soon as his boy Yuanyang was taken by Su Chan immediately soared into the sky. Her spiritual power cultivation suddenly surpassed Zi Yuan and Zhou Qin, and even surpassed the 8-tailed fox Lu Yi. If other female cultivators knew about such a coincidence, they would be so envious that their eyes would turn red. However, such a thing could only happen once, not twice. After all, a boy Yuanyang could only be a virgin once, and it was impossible for a man to be a virgin for the rest of his life. When Li Yundong opened his eyes again, he was shocked by Su Chan. Although he had seen Su Chan show her real body at that time, she was a small 3-tailed fox spirit. Only then did Su Chan remember that she had obtained the Yuanyang of Li Yundong, the reincarnated wisdom king, which was equivalent to decades of hard work. Moreover, this aura was the purest supreme yang qi in the world. It was definitely not addition. Once this aura merged with her supreme yin qi, the effect would cause her cultivation to increase exponentially. Su Chan couldn't help but be overjoyed. In this way I can go through the thunder retribution with you. Li Yundong laughed and put his arms around the little girl's soft waist. Okay, I'll accompany you to see the meteor shower. Su Chan giggled and said, how can there be a meteor shower at this time? There is a thunderstorm. Li Yundong smiled and said, then I'll take you to see the thunderstorm. After that, the two of them looked at each other and smiled. After the young spirit left their bodies, they flew towards the rolling thunderclouds hand in hand. Chapter 834. Li Yundong and Su Chan had just flown together, and their love for each other was like oil and honey. They were really reluctant to be separated even when the young spirit was flying into the sky. Their fingers were tightly intertwined, as if they were afraid that the other would disappear in the next second. At this time, although it was raining heavily, thunder and lightning were intertwining in the clouds, and the world was dark. Only when lightning flashed and thunder rumbled would it instantly illuminate the world. However, in such a hazy night, Li Yundong and Su Chan felt very bright in their hearts, and the rumbling thunder in their ears seemed to reveal a sense of joy. The two of them held hands and were about to fly into the thunderclouds when they suddenly heard the thunder inside and a loud crack. Li Yundong looked up and saw that after the thunder, countless golden lights were scattered everywhere. After a while, they flew back to their home in Tianan City. Li Yundong smiled and said, it seems that Ziyuan and Zhou Qin are going through the thunder retribution. Su Chan blinked her eyes and said, ah, they are so powerful. They can start going through the thunder retribution now. By the way, Yundong, who do you think is going through the thunder retribution? Li Yundong smiled slightly and said, it's hard to say. Could be anyone. Both of them have been taught by Master Zhang Zhishuan. As long as they understand what infinite void is and what unity of heaven and man is, they will be qualified to go through the thunder retribution. Both of them are talented and intelligent, and they are extremely rare cultivation geniuses. Ziyuan was originally an inner disciple, so she has a very deep understanding of cultivation. The reason why she has not made any breakthrough in cultivation is that she is stuck in the bottleneck of Yang Spirit and Jinshin. Previously, when she absorbed the divine qi of the Diuan Jindan on Tiandu Peak, it can be said that she has successfully broken through to the Jinshin phase. With her comprehension and aptitude, it is not difficult for her to comprehend the immortal Jinshin phase. Although she did not inherit such divine power, her body was also transformed by the elixir. Although her cultivation has always been a little lower than Ziyuan's, she has been cultivating hard. The time and energy she spends on cultivation every day are far more than ours. Moreover, she has read the heaven patching technique before and has a deeper understanding of cultivation. I think it is not surprising that she has broken through to the realm of the immortal golden body at this time. As Li Yundong was speaking, he saw another person flashing with a faint golden light fly out of the house in Tianan City. From a distance, he could vaguely recognize that it was a woman. The woman had a slim figure and exuded an ethereal and elegant aura. Su Chan immediately laughed and said, I know. This is Sister Ziyuan. That was Sister Zhou Qin just now. The two of them are so powerful. They're taking turns to undergo the lightning tribulation. Li Yundong also nodded with approval in his eyes. He turned back and pinched Su Chan's nose. You can go through the thunder tribulation now. Do you want to go with me? Su Chan made a face at Li Yundong and said, no, it's not good to go through the thunder tribulation together. It's easy to get into trouble. Li Yundong knew that if two people went through the thunder tribulation in a thundercloud, it was indeed easy to cause a big accident, because the power of the heavenly thunder was automatically judged according to the strength of the person who was going through the tribulation. The stronger the person was, the more powerful the heavenly thunder would be, and vice versa. If two people went into a thundercloud at the same time to undergo the thunder tribulation, the heavenly thunder would automatically add up the strength of the two people and determine that they were one person. Then the terrifying heavenly thunder would fall. Such a heavenly thunder was definitely not something a person could withstand alone. Even Li Yundong would be scared out of his wits. Li Yundong saw that Su Chan's words were reasonable, so he said with a smile, well, let them go through the thunder tribulation first. Let's go play in the sky for a while. This thundercloud was huge and continuous, almost covering the entire Tianan city. Li Yundong took Su Chan and flew far away before they got out of the range of the thundercloud. The two of them flew up into the sky hand in hand. After passing through the rolling thundercloud, they suddenly broke through the thick clouds. The bright moonlight immediately sprinkled on them like water, making them look like they were wearing a thin layer of white gauze. Li Yundong took Su Chan's hand and stood high in the sky with her. Looking down, the two of them saw thick black clouds rolling under their feet, and the starry sky around them seemed to have been washed. Although they didn't see the sun that Li Yundong had mentioned before, the bright moon was hanging high in the sky. Except for the dull thunder rolling under their feet, there was no other sound. Only the eternal starry sky and the cold full moon accompanied them, silent and bright, and they were in a tranquil space. At this time, the world was quiet, and there was no tense atmosphere of transcending the thunder tribulation. Li Yundong and Su Chan held hands, looked at each other and smiled. Li Yundong saw that the little girl was smiling sweetly, as if honey was about to flow out of the corners of her eyes and eyebrows. She was extremely sweet. He couldn't help laughing and said, "Why are you smiling so happily?" Su Chan held Li Yundong's hand tightly and said in a daze, "Yundong, my biggest dream in the past was to travel around with you. Now this dream has suddenly come true. I feel happy in my heart. I'm so afraid that this happy life will not last long." Li Yundong laughed and reached out to pinch the tip of the little girl's nose. "Don't be silly. We will always be happy. I'll take you wherever you want to go in the future, okay?" Su Chan was delighted when she heard this. She happily stretched out her little finger and said, "Okay, let's make a pinky promise for 100 years. The two of them held hands affectionately and swore to the sky like two children, making a vow that would last for 100 years. At this moment, in the faraway Japan, a thunderstorm had also descended on this land. In the sky above Mie Prefecture, a loud crack of thunder shattered the night. A bolt of lightning cut through the sky and suddenly illuminated the world. Se Chumo's beautiful face was also instantly illuminated by the lightning, but it was only for a moment. Soon, lightning rolled across the sky, and her face was quickly hidden in the night along with the surrounding shrines. Next to her, Isi Xinguang was sitting cross-legged in the long corridor of the shrine, with a tea tray and tea set in front of him. He was making tea leisurely, looking up at the sky from time to time, which was filled with thunder and lightning. Mie Prefecture was an important place for tea in Japan. Its output ranked third in the country and it had a long history of tea culture. Similarly, this prefecture had once been the ancestral home of Ise Shinto. Even in modern times, many foreign tourists came to Mie Prefecture. If they didn't go to the famous Ise Grand Shrine, it was equivalent to not going to Mie Prefecture. Behind Ise Xinguang was the famous Fengshoku Grand Shrine of the Ise Grand Shrine. Looking at these buildings during the day, people would feel that these antique Japanese-style buildings exuded a sense of solemnity and majesty, like a neat line of samurai, which made people not dare to be presumptuous. When night fell, the divine palace was hidden in the darkness, like a group of giants hiding behind a curtain of darkness, adding to its majesty. Especially at this time, the rain was like strings of pearls that flowed along the eaves of the divine palace, forming curtains of water. This made this place even more mysterious. Oh, it's true. This time the thunder retribution period seems to be particularly powerful. After pouring himself a cup of tea, Ise Xinguang held the teacup in one hand and stroked his unshaven chin with the other, clicking his tongue. Ise Xinguang's words seemed to be directed at Ise Izumo, but it also seemed like he was talking to himself. Izumo looked down at him, then continued to look up at the sky, as if he was thinking about something while looking at the rolling thunderclouds in the sky. Ise Xinguang looked at her curiously and couldn't help asking, "Hey, you've been looking up for a long time. Aren't you afraid that your neck is sore? Is it that beautiful? Why didn't I find that you used to be so interested in thunder and rain?" Ise Chuyun lowered her head again and looked at Xinguang deeply. She said softly, "I'm wondering, why did Li Yundong defeat me so easily back then?" Ise Xinguang couldn't help sighing. He knew that Ise Chuyun was proud and arrogant. Although she had been defeated by Li Yundong at that time, after returning home, she couldn't understand why Li Yundong, who was like an arrow at the end of its flight, could still defeat her. With this question in mind, when Ise Chuyun returned, she began to frantically read the cultivation classics of China's Taoism. In this era where knowledge and information were exploding, almost no sect or ancient book had any secrets to speak of. Perhaps the most important words had to be passed down orally by the head of the sect. Without these words, these martial arts would only be second-rate martial arts. But what Ise Chuyun wanted to find was the most basic reason. She began to suspect that there was something wrong with the cultivation methods of the Japanese, just like Tsuruko Tachibana, who had been fetching water for a long time with a wooden bucket with 5 holes. It was a very simple reason that restricted the development of the entire Japanese cultivation world. But even if there were wise people who understood it, they were powerless to change it. This was because the Japanese cultivation world had been flourishing since the Meiji Restoration. Even after the defeat in World War II, the cultivation world had become more and more prosperous and powerful by relying on General MacArthur's draft constitution on freedom of religious belief. However, at this time the Chinese cultivation world, which had been powerful for 2,000 years, had completely fallen to the bottom. Japan had used its own prosperity and strength to fight against China's decline. How could they not be disloyal when one side was on the other side? In the past 100 years, in the countless collisions between China and Japan, most of the Chinese and Japanese cultivation worlds had been the vanguard. The two sides had fought countless times, and the Japanese cultivation world had won several large-scale victories against China. This kind of victory had never been seen in the history of the Japanese cultivation world for more than 1,000 years. As a result, the attitude of the Japanese cultivators, who used to be respectful and cautious students, suddenly turned into the attitude of the arrogant and condescending nouveau riche. The so-called victory concealed everything. With the support of the government and the fanatical support of the people, the Japanese cultivators quickly cultivated a large number of murderous demons and fighting machines like Takahashi Shota. Their existence was completely different from the cultivators of the Chinese cultivation world, who existed for immortal cultivation. They only existed for one purpose: victory. In order to win, they would do anything. This kind of cultivation method was close to the devil's way, but when the whole country was possessed by the devil's way became the right way, and the real immortal way became the devil's way instead. Whether it was Japanese Buddhism or ISE Shrine, most of their cultivation methods paid attention to speed, stability, and ruthlessness. Moreover, this kind of power mostly came from faith and inheritance. With the support of the faith power of hundreds of millions of believers, it was too easy for a cultivator to become stronger through the power of faith. The cultivation of Japanese cultivators was fast and easy, so most of them only cultivated their nature and did not cultivate their fate. Therefore, they did not pay attention to the Juji phase, and it was impossible for them to go through the thunder tribulation. It was precisely because the power came so quickly and easily that the entire Japanese cultivation world fell into an inexplicable exaggeration and arrogance. No one was willing to think about it, and no one was willing to take the amazing risk of going through the thunder tribulation. But when these Japanese suddenly met Li Yunyang, the reincarnated wisdom king, and were defeated by him twice in a row, the entire Japanese cultivation world was shocked. Finally, some people began to seriously reflect. Issei Chuyun was one of them. She had become the Ksitigarbha goddess at a young age, and her power was equivalent to that of the thunder tribulation realm. It was extremely rare for her to have such achievements at such a young age, even in the 2,000 years of history of the cultivation world of China. Naturally, it was impossible for her to reach such a realm by relying on her own beauty, and it was even more impossible for her to rely on the support of the power of faith. She had relied more on her extraordinary understanding and intelligence. There was no lack of wise people in Japan, but due to the limitations of their innate structure, they were often short-sighted. They could only plan one thing but not the overall situation. Li Yunyang's head-on attack made Issei Chuyun vaguely feel that there seemed to be a huge problem with the cultivation methods of the entire Japanese cultivation world. Otherwise, it would be impossible for them to be defeated by the same person again and again. But what was the problem? Issei Chuyun could feel that if he could understand this truth, not only would his strength improve by leaps and bounds, but even the entire Japanese cultivation world would be turned upside down. Sometimes, the truth seemed simple to outsiders, but the insiders couldn't see it no matter how hard they tried. For example, Tsuruko Tachibana had been carrying a 5-leaky wooden bucket for so many years, but he just couldn't understand Wang Yuanshan's hint. Issei Chuyun also faintly looked at the rolling thunderclouds in the sky, deep in thought. But the answer he wanted seemed to be separated by an invisible layer of gauze. He could touch it but he couldn't get it. Issei Xingguang saw that Chuyun's eyes had been flickering, as if she was about to understand something in the next second. But the next second she still maintained this posture without moving at all. It was like there was an apple on her head that was on the verge of falling. If it fell, Newton would discover the law of universal gravitation, but the apple just wouldn't fall. Issei Xingguang looked at it and shook his head, then slowly drank his tea. It was at this moment that a bolt of lightning suddenly flashed in the sky, bringing with it a series of sparks. Issei Chuyun's eyes suddenly flashed. She stood up straight and was about to shout enlightenment. Suddenly, a figure flashed on the stone path outside the divine palace. It was a monk in a cassock and a bamboo hat. The monk didn't care about the heavy rain on his head. Before he got close, he shouted from afar, "Lord Xingguang, Lord Chuyun. Oh no, something big has happened. Se Xingguang and Se Chuyun both turned their heads to look at the monk at the same time. They saw the monk running to them, panting and saying breathlessly, "God, the mystical silver fox, has appeared." This sentence was no small matter. It immediately shocked the two of them, and they said in unison, "What did you say?" The monk took a deep breath as if he had just run for more than 1,000 miles. "The mystical silver fox has appeared in Shuya, == well, there was a bug before. It should be rain after the beginning of spring, and after the rain, it is Jingxia. I remembered it wrong and made it the vernal equinox. It has been corrected. I apologize to all my readers." Chapter 835. The mystical silver fox was a nightmare in the depths of the souls of Japanese cultivators. This evil existence was like a sword of Damocles hanging over their heads. No one knew when the sword would fall. Most of the Japanese cultivators did not go through the thunder retribution, and no one had the ability to completely destroy the mystical silver fox. They could only seal it. Therefore, the Tiantai sect and the ape family guarded the seal of the mystical silver fox from generation to generation, trembling with fear. But as time went by, after more than 900 years, even the most determined immortals would lose their vigilance over the long period of time. That was until that earth-shattering roar came from Kyoto, Japan. "Who can stop me?" Only then did the Japanese cultivation world wake up from a dream and recall the terrible history of the Emperor of Toba. After the escape of the mystical silver fox, the Japanese cultivation world organized a large-scale crusade army, but it was sunk by Li Jiandong on his own halfway. The defeat in this battle greatly weakened the morale of the Japanese cultivation world. No one wanted to think about the mystical silver fox. "Nanny, we can't even beat a little girl. How can we deal with the mystical silver fox? Fuck, let's wash and sleep." However, this kind of ostrich mentality did not let them live a few days of peace. What should come would come eventually, just a little later and a little earlier. Hearing that the mystical silver fox had suddenly appeared in Suyi, Se Chuyun and Se Xingguang really felt as if they had fallen into an ice cave, and their bodies were cold all over. At this time, the mystical silver fox appeared in Suyi, where she had been sealed. Why didn't she sweep over the sects of the Japanese cultivation world one by one and defeat them one by one? Instead, she chose to take the initiative to appear in Suyi? What does this mean? Has the mystical silver fox recovered her full strength? Does she want to pay the blood debt in this place? All the things that Se Chuyun was about to understand before disappeared in an instant, and deep fear rose in his mind. The stronger a person was, the more he would understand the horror of the mystical silver fox. It was like the bigger a circle was, the larger the area it came into contact with, and the more he knew how big the world was. 900 years ago, the whole Japanese cultivation world joined forces with 80,000 elite soldiers to defeat the mystical silver fox. What about now? What were the odds of winning against the mystical silver fox with the decadent morale of the newly defeated army? Se Shenko, who had always been a bit cynical, had a serious look on his face. He knew that this matter had put the Japanese cultivation world on the line. He turned his head and said to the monk in front of him, "Let's go to sumo." This kind of thing happened in Kyoto, Osaka, and other places in Japan. In an instant, the cultivation world of Japan turned out in full force. Almost all the masters carefully planned for the future before they went out, or some sects simply went out in full force. If they couldn't defeat the mystical silver fox, they wouldn't want to live. The land area of Japan was only 310,000 square kilometers. It was not even as big as China's Yunnan province. The entire country's land area was only about 3% of China's. If the weather forecast of China was reported one by one in the second-class cities, it would take 4 or 5 minutes. If it was reported one by one in the second-class cities, it would take half a day. However, the weather forecast of Japan could be summarized in one sentence. There would be rain in the whole country or no rain in the whole country. It was late at night and the sky was so dark that one could hardly see their fingers. When it was raining in Mie County, it was also raining in Haimu County, and it was pouring. Only at the moment of lightning and thunder could one see many small black spots in the sky flying towards Sumo in Haimu County through the light of the lightning. About 10 miles around the Life and Death Stone scenic area in Sumo, the rolling hills were covered with cultivators of various sections. When Ise Xingguang and Ise Chuyun landed, they found that all the masters of the 3 Buddhist giants, the Tiantai sect, the Pure Land sect and the Xinyan Tantrism, had arrived. Many masters of the large-scale sects of the Shintoism had also arrived. At this time there were still many masters flying in the sky. Although flying in the sky at this time was easy to provoke the thunder retribution, in this urgent situation, in order to arrive as soon as possible, all the cultivators chose to fly here directly. If anyone was unlucky enough to be struck by the heavenly thunder, he could only say Amitba or shout Bakialu, and then die. At this time, the cultivators of the various sects did not hold up their lanterns. Instead, they cast their magic. Some held a fireball that could not be extinguished by water, while others had a fireball that could not be blown away by wind and rain floating around them. Their figures were clearly illuminated. From afar, one could see the continuous flames on the mountain range like a fire dragon. It was majestic and imposing. At first, the cultivators from the Japanese cultivation world didn't dare to light a fire at all. They were afraid that after the fire was lit, the enemy would be in the dark and the mystical silver fox would come over and clean them up. But slowly, more and more people from the Japanese cultivation world came, and the Japanese people gradually became bolder. No one knew who was the first to start a fire, but slowly others also started a fire. It was as if more people walked at night and they became bolder. Their voices also became louder. When the cultivators of the major cultivation sects saw that Ise Chuyun and Ise Xingguang had also come, they were overjoyed. They all knew that these two were masters of the thunder retribution and were the leaders of the Japanese cultivation world. When they came, their momentum suddenly increased a lot. Some cultivators who were on good terms with Ise Chuyun and Ise Xingguang greeted them in a loud voice. Even in the thunderstorm, their voices spread far away, as if they were afraid that the mystical silver fox could not hear them. Ise Chuyun and Ise Xingguang, the two top experts of the Ise Shinto, looked at each other, their eyes full of worry. At this time, Abe Yoli, the patriarch of the Abe family, also came over with a tall and long sun hat. He looked at them with questioning eyes as if asking if they had the confidence to fight. Ise Chuyun's face darkened. She shook her head slightly and sneered in a low voice, "Listen to the voices of these guys, a group of idiots. Can the loud voice scare the mystical silver fox away? They are almost scared out of their wits." Although Ise Chuyun's voice was low, some people next to him still heard it. They all looked at Ise Chuyun with displeased and reproachful eyes. Seeing this, Ise Xingguang immediately interrupted with a smile. "Oh Yoli, what kind of weather is this? Don't you feel uncomfortable wearing such a hat?" Abe Yoli smiled bitterly. As the patriarch of the Abe family, as long as he went out, he naturally had to pay attention to his demeanor. This was the accumulation and demeanor of a 1,000-year-old family. Even if he died, he had to die gracefully. Abe Yoli raised his hands and clasped them in his long and wide white sun robe. He used his sleeves to hide his bitter smile and his voice. He said in a low voice, "Xingguang, I have a request." Although there was an incomparably fierce battle ahead, Ise Shenko still appeared sloppy. He behaved like a Japanese. His hands were tucked into his kimono, and his arms were not in the sleeves. Instead, they were protruding from his chest. He hugged his chest with one arm and stroked his beard with the other. Ise Xingguang smiled and said, "Yoli, if you have anything to say, just say it. We have been friends for decades. You don't have to be so polite." Abe Yoli used his sleeves to cover his face. His face was serious, but his eyes were full of pleading. He said in a low voice, "This time, my son has to follow me to fight against the mystical silver fox. If I don't let him, he will commit suicide. Our Abe family has an irreconcilable blood feud with the mystical silver fox. Our Abe family will be the first to bear the brunt of the battle. In case something happens to me, you have to take care of my son." Ise Shinkuin immediately stopped smiling. He looked at the excited Abe not far away and couldn't help but sigh. A newborn calf is really not afraid of a tiger. With that, he withdrew his gaze and said very solemnly, "Don't worry, Yoli. I will take good care of him." As he said that, he smiled and said, "You're worrying too much, Ruli-san. We have many experts here. In terms of strength, we far exceed the Japanese cultivation world of 900 years ago. Moreover, Ruli-san is a very powerful great yin-yang master. Nothing will happen." Abe Yoli forced a smile and remained silent. After a while, Aichiyun suddenly turned his head and said to Abe Yoli, "Lord Abe, how did the mystical silver fox appear here?" Abe Yoli looked at several monks shivering in the cold wind and rain in the temple near Susano in the distance and said in a low voice, "They found that someone was crossing the thunder tribulation here. Out of curiosity, they went to check it out. Unexpectedly, when they checked, they found a 9-tailed fox entrenched in a hotel." Si Chuyun frowned and said, "Didn't the mystical silver fox kill them?" Abe Yoli shook his head and said, No, she must have let them go on purpose. Ji took a deep breath and said, "She's coming at us in a menacing manner." Although it was quite unlucky to entrust an orphan to an orphan at the last moment, everyone's heart was heavy as if a huge stone was pressing on it. Even the shouts of cultivators from various sects around them could not hide the fear in their hearts. They couldn't understand why the mystical silver fox dared to appear here all of a sudden, and why she would rather wait for all of them to gather than take the initiative to attack. Was she waiting for them to meet up and kill them all in one fell swoop? Thinking of this, the cultivators of all sects in the Japanese cultivation world were both angry and frightened. At the same time, in a small hotel in Suyi, Lu Feier stood in the yard in horror, looking at the continuous fire on the distant mountain range. Her eyes were full of fear as she looked at the mystical silver fox in front of her. After getting along these days, she also knew a lot about the past of the mystical silver fox, and she also knew that she was going to start a massacre here. Although the mystical silver fox's methods were a little fierce and cruel, after all, they were all members of the same clan. They were not outsiders who were not of the same clan. Most importantly, if the mystical silver fox died, she was afraid that she would be finished. She would definitely be regarded as an accomplice by the Japanese. She would probably die. She looked at the constantly twisting fire dragon in fear, and was even more frightened by the voices of many people coming from the mountain range. Lu Feier couldn't help asking, "There are so many people. Can you win?" The mystical silver fox's spiritual power and Jinchi still existed, but she had forgotten a lot of her understanding of magic and cultivation. It was equivalent to walking on her own cultivation path again. Because she had walked it before, it was very fast to walk again at this time. Li Jiandong had only passed the first round of Thunder Retribution, and she had already passed the 9th round of Thunder Retribution. It could be said that her cultivation had been restored. Except that she had not found her fox's real body, her spiritual power was no less than that of 900 years ago. At this time, the mystical silver fox was standing alone in the yard. It was empty around her. There was neither a guest nor a master. The innkeeper had already escaped. She stood alone in the rain. Although it was raining heavily around her, there was not a drop of rain on her body. The bean-sized raindrops hit the roof tiles and made a crackling sound like fried beans, but when they fell on her body, they were automatically bounced off. The figure of the mystical silver fox looked extremely delicate and weak. Compared with the dazzling fire dragon on the top of the mountain, she was too small. However, she was wearing a fiery red dress, and the 2 white fox tails under the dress were dragging on the ground like the hem of a skirt. The 7 golden fox tails rushed up and kept twisting. When the mystical silver fox heard Lu Feier's words, she looked up at the fire on the mountain range and suddenly sneered, "These cowards. They're just a bunch of mobs. I treat them like dirt and clay dogs." Lu Feier didn't believe it in her heart. Her gaze was seen by the mystical silver fox. The mystical silver fox immediately snorted and said, "You don't believe it? Well, watch me kill the enemy." As soon as she finished speaking, her figure moved and quickly disappeared from where she was, leaving only a faint afterimage that slowly disappeared. Almost at the same time, the fire on the distant mountain range was bright, and the fire dragon quickly twisted and churned. After a while, the mystical silver fox appeared in the same place again, covered in blood, holding 2 bloody heads in her hands. At this time, the afterimage left by her had not disappeared, and the cries of surprise, screams and curses from the distant mountain range could be clearly heard, and they could not be heard for a long time. At this moment, Lu Feier was really stunned. She knew that the mystical silver fox, a monster known as the Uzeo in Japan, was very strong, but she didn't expect that the mystical silver fox was so strong. The mystical silver fox threw the 2 heads on the ground, as if she were hitting grass bandits. She raised her head and laughed. Her voice was like waves and it was sent out in waves. "I'm the mystical silver fox. Who dares to fight with me?" In an instant, the sound on the mountain range disappeared, and there was a dead silence between heaven and earth. There will be another update later, but don't wait. Chapter 836. The voice of the mystical silver fox shook the sky, almost shattering the courage of every Japanese cultivator and frightening their hearts. They didn't expect that the mystical silver fox would suddenly kill them. When they were unprepared, she killed 2 people in a row, took their heads and left calmly. Her speed was as fast as lightning, so fast that even top cultivators like them couldn't react. In particular, the next words of the mystical silver fox made almost every Japanese cultivator's face turn red in an instant, especially the brothers of the two dead cultivators. They clenched their fists tightly, tears in their eyes, and blue veins and blood vessels on their faces. This was a great shame. The mystical silver fox had killed 2 people in a row in front of them and then retreated calmly. However, it was such a great shame and such monstrous hatred that these cultivators, who had lost their friends, suppressed their angry roars and buried them in their throats, as if there was an invisible mountain sitting on their throats. Not only them, but even Ise Chuyun and Ise Xinguang were also taken away by the momentum of the mystical silver fox. For a moment they were stunned and couldn't come to their senses. But soon their faces turned red and their eyes were wide open. Just when everyone was angry but didn't dare to say anything, suddenly Abe Nakian, the reasonable son of the Abe family, roared angrily, "Abe family, Abe Nakian is here. I dare to fight." This cry immediately made every Japanese cultivator feel ashamed. After all, they were all proud and arrogant masters, but for a moment they were robbed of their momentum by the mystical silver fox. At this time someone made the cry of a horse and they immediately broke out. For a moment, the roars on the mountain range were like thunder, and there were bursts of curses. With so many peerless experts cursing at the same time, the sound was truly terrifying. Lu Feier only felt as if she was in a football stadium that could accommodate 100,000 people, and everyone in this football stadium was hysterically roaring at her. Her ears were almost deafened, and her heart and lungs were trembling non-stop. Lu Feier covered her ears, and her face became more and more frightened, as if she would be shocked to death by the voices of these people in the next second. However, the mystical silver fox stood in the yard, not afraid at all. Instead, she raised her head and laughed loudly. She said to Lu Feier with a proud face, "How is it? I said that this is a mob, right? They actually want a little child who hasn't even grown up to speak, so they dare to curse. Ha ha ha, a group of timid people, nothing to be afraid of." The mystical silver fox was so complacent that her words became half-written and half-spoken. Seeing that Lu Feier was so scared that she couldn't help herself, she smiled and said, "Don't be afraid. You with me here, no one in the world can hurt you at all. If you think they're noisy, I'll stop them right now." After saying that, her figure instantly disappeared on the spot and suddenly appeared in the sky above the mountain range. In an instant, the mystical silver fox appeared in front of the cultivators of various sects in Japan. She opened her beautiful eyes, and her beautiful face was full of ferocious killing intent. She said condescendingly, "Who wants to die?" The cultivators of various sects in Japan had been cursing for a long time, but they didn't see the mystical silver fox appear. At this time, they suddenly saw her appear in front of them without warning. They were all shocked at once and the cursing stopped abruptly. The earth-shattering curses disappeared in an instant. Seeing that they had stopped talking immediately, the silver fox asked sternly, "Who dares to come forward and die?" At this time, her 7 golden fox tails rose into the sky, as if they were going to cover the sky and the earth. Everyone felt that the dark sky in front of them had turned golden at this time. The momentum of the mystical silver fox was too terrible. She shouted 3 times in front of the crowd, but no one dared to answer. Abe Nakian, who had shouted for a fight before, felt that his whole body was paralyzed with fear. Not to mention standing up to fight, he couldn't even shout at this time. The mystical silver fox asked a few questions in a row. Seeing that no one dared to answer, she raised her head and laughed 3 times. Her figure flashed, and her fox tail reached into the crowd. Then she turned into a shadow and disappeared. When the crowd saw that the shadow had completely disappeared, a pillar of blood shot up into the sky. It was the cultivator of the Deshang sect who had been beheaded at some point. At this time, blood spurted out from his neck. Everyone was shocked and horrified. At this time they didn't even have the courage to curse. Their hearts were cold. Se Chuyun and Ise Xinguang looked at each other, and the fear in each other's hearts was hard to control. They all knew that the mystical silver fox was so free to come and go. In terms of momentum, it completely overwhelmed so many people here. It was not only because they had a natural fear of the mystical silver fox, but also because the mystical silver fox had reached an unimaginable realm. Most of their understanding of the silver fox came from the text. Moreover, in their opinion, the Japanese cultivation world 900 years ago was completely a vassal of the Chinese cultivation world. Their relationship was like that of a teacher and a student. At that time, the Chinese cultivation world was in a very prosperous state, while the Japanese cultivation world had just started. Even if the cultivators at that time were powerful, they must have been extremely limited. Now, after 900 years of development, were they not as good as the ancients? Moreover, in the past 100 years, the Japanese cultivation world had won many times over the Chinese cultivation world, which had made them more and more arrogant. It was not until Li Jiandong beat them up that they calmed down a little and began to realize the power and terror of the silver fox. Was the immovable wisdom king powerful enough? But in those days, the reincarnation of the immovable wisdom king had also gathered a large group of cultivators to break up the soul of the silver fox. Li Jiandong, the reincarnation of the wisdom king, could beat them like this with his own strength. What about the silver fox? Therefore, Li Jiandong had dealt a very serious blow to the Japanese cultivation world. When they faced the silver fox, they had already lost their morale before the battle. Moreover, more importantly, none of them realized that the Japanese cultivation world could only stare at the strongest demon in Japan, Yamada no Orochi, and could do nothing about it. They could only wait for the silver fox to deal with Yamada no Orochi. Only then did some scholars jump out to beautify themselves, saying that Susanoo had killed Yamada no Orochi. Anyway, the silver fox had been sealed at this time. No matter how they boasted, no one would cause trouble for them. The Japanese cultivation world couldn't beat Yamada no Orochi together, and Yamada no Orochi didn't have any temper when it met a mystical silver fox with only one soul and two souls left. Then why could these Japanese cultivators beat mystical silver fox together? In fact, what played a very important role in this was the 80,000 soldiers sent by the heavenly bird feather emperor. These 80,000 soldiers were all mortals, and they were very strong and fearless of death. They rushed toward the silver fox with mystical luck like crazy, which made the silver fox with mystical luck afraid to take action. On the one hand, she had to deal with the fierce attacks of the cultivators, and on the other hand, she had to be careful not to kill more mortals and quickly provoke the divine tribulation. As a result, her cultivation was greatly reduced, and her amazing speed was nailed to the ground and she could not use it. In the end, she was swarmed by a group of cultivators and finally knocked to the ground. However, after the matter was over, no one in the cultivation world admitted the role of these 80,000 soldiers. They just wanted to stick all the credit of sealing the silver fox with mystical luck on their faces. Even if they wanted to share it with other sects, they would not be willing to do anything. They argued with each other until their faces were red. How could they be willing to share the credit with ordinary mortals? Therefore, up to now, no cultivator had thought of this point. Besides, even if wise men like Ise Chuyun and Ise Xingguang had thought of it, there was nothing they could do. Could it be possible to organize 80,000 Japanese soldiers to attack the silver fox with mystical luck? How many people were there in the Japanese self-defense forces? Besides, it was no longer the era of the unity of politics and religion in Japan. Now the separation of politics and religion, the affairs of the cultivation world should be handled by themselves, and it would never be publicized to the outside world. To say the least, even if so many people were really organized to attack the silver fox with live ammunition, it would be amazing and the odds of winning would be great, but, if these soldiers of the self-defense forces who had fled countless times when they encountered the explosion of the Fukushima nuclear power plant, were really going to face the silver fox with mystical luck? Then, it was better to say, fuck, wash and sleep. When the silver fox with mystical luck returned to the yard, she was carrying 2 more heads in her hands. She threw them on the ground and said with a laugh, "How is it? Is it quiet now?" Lu Feier couldn't help but put down her hand and looked at the silver fox with a face full of shock. She couldn't believe that there was such a strong person in the world. Lu Feier was speechless for a moment. The silver fox with mystical luck's face was full of pride. Just as she was about to speak, she suddenly heard an even more terrifying curse coming from the mountain range. Then, countless spells were bombarded into the yard. The mystical silver fox was furious. In an instant, she rose into the air and waved her 7 golden tails. Like a huge cattail leaf fan that blotted out the sky and the earth, she swept all the magic spells back in an instant. For a moment, the people on the top of the mountain were in a mess. The silver fox with mystical luck felt that she had lost face in front of Lu Feier, and her killing intent rose in her heart. Her figure flashed, and in an instant, she flew towards the young man who had cursed the most fiercely. She remembered that the young man had clearly said that he was a member of the ape family. The silver fox with mystical luck laughed grimly in her heart. The ape family? That's great. I can use you as an example. She suddenly appeared in front of Abe Neazin, and her 5 fingers were like hooks, grabbing towards the top of his head. With this grab, even a Vajra bronze statue would be crushed by her. Abe Nazan was so scared that his eyes stared blankly. He didn't even have the consciousness to dodge or resist, and his mind was blank. On the other hand, Abe Yoli, who was eager to protect his children, roared and rushed out in an instant. His spirit Shikigami also rushed towards the silver fox with mystical luck crazily. The silver fox with mystical luck didn't even look at it. With just one punch, she smashed the spirit Shikigami into pieces with a bang. At the same time, she rushed to the front of Abe Yoli like a hot knife through butter. Another punch was aimed at the front of Abe Yoli's chest. Se Xingguang and Se Chuyun, who were next to him, were shocked and rushed towards the silver fox with mystical luck. Their cultivation was extremely high. At this time, when they attacked at the same time, their power was amazing and the earth was shaken. But the speed of the silver fox with mystical luck was amazing. When they rushed in front of her, she had already punched through Abe Yoli's chest. At the same time, when she quickly stretched out her hand, she gently wiped Abe Yoli's neck with the tip of her finger. This slender hand was like a sickle cutting chives. She cut off the head of the famous great Inyang master of Japan and sent it flying into the sky. The headless body of Abe Yoli didn't move at all. Blood gushed out of his chest, and the blood on his neck soared to the sky for more than 3 meters. After the blood splashed down, it still became cold, and Abe Yoli's head was full of ferociousness. The young master Abe stared at his father's body with his eyes wide open. After the blood drained in an instant, he finally shook a few times and fell heavily to the ground. At this time in the crowd, where the wild laughter of the silver fox with mystical luck sounded, there was blood soaring into the sky. The mountain range had already become a piece of land. Countless masters were chasing after the silver fox with mystical luck, but they couldn't even touch one of her fingers. At this moment, Abe Yoli didn't even feel the anger and pain of losing his father. He thought desperately, Amaterasu God. If this is a nightmare, then let this nightmare wake up as soon as possible. Please? The cultivators in the Japanese cultivation world had expected that this would be a bitter battle, but they hadn't expected that it would be an overwhelming massacre. Chapter 837. In the blink of an eye, the mystical silver fox had killed through the cultivators of various sects in Japan. For a time, the top of the mountain was covered with blood. Heads were rolling on the ground and there were endless wails and screams. The experts of various sects who were chasing after the mystical silver fox felt their hearts turn cold. The more they chased, the more desperate they became. Their speed was not slow. On the contrary, it could also be described as a flash of lightning. In the eyes of ordinary people, it was as fast as thunder and fierce as angry. But no matter how fast they were, they could not compare with the mystical silver fox. The speed of the mystical silver fox had even surpassed that of a flash of lightning. Although it seemed to be a little faster than them, it was a gap that they could not surpass. They could only follow behind the mystical silver fox and eat the dust. They watched her back fight in the crowd, like a tiger entering a flock of sheep. This was the martial arts in the world. There was nothing that could not be broken, only speed could not be broken. There was a limit to the human body's reaction. Although most cultivators had broken through the reaction limit of mortals, there was a lower limit after all. At this time, the limit of their reaction could not keep up with the speed of the mystical silver fox. They clearly saw that she had pounced on them. They wanted to raise their hands to cast spells to resist, but their brains could not react and their bodies could not react. As soon as they raised their hands, the mystical silver fox had already punched through their chests. When their blood flowed rapidly and they were ready to cast spells, the slender hands of the mystical silver fox had already cut through their necks like sickles, and the blood in their heads and necks soared into the sky. After all, Ise Chuyun was an extremely outstanding cultivator in the Japanese cultivation world. She could tell at a glance that if they continued to fight like this, they would be wiped out by the mystical silver fox. She immediately said in a stern voice, "Everyone, the Yang spirit will fight." The reaction speed of the Yang spirit was far faster than that of the human body. It could even be said that it could reach the realm of following one's mind and body. As soon as Ise Chuyun shouted, these Japanese cultivators suddenly came to their senses one by one, and the Yang spirit came out of their bodies one after another. As soon as they came out of their bodies, they immediately caught up with the mystical silver fox. Everyone was in high spirits. They shouted angrily and pounced on the mystical silver fox. For a moment, the mystical silver fox was surrounded by people from all directions. She couldn't show her speed for a while, but she was proud and fearless. She shouted, "Come on! After that, her hands flew, and the 7 golden fox tails swept around like steel whips. All around her, there was an incomparably ferocious gale. Wherever her golden fox tail swept past, rocks would immediately shatter, and people would immediately be sent flying. Up, down, left and right, there wasn't the slightest flaw. At her level of cultivation, in a close combat like this, spells and magic treasures became secondary. At this moment, even her pair of seemingly weak hands had become a terrifying killing machine. Anyone who touched her would die. Even if they didn't die, their bones would be broken. It was as if her whole body was filled with magic treasures, and every move she made was full of spells. Although the cultivators of the various sects in Japan had an overwhelming advantage in number, they were all fighting on their own. Some of the sects that wanted to form a formation could not form a formation for a while because of the scene. The mystical silver fox came and went like a ghost. This situation was really getting worse and worse, and the more the Japanese fought, the more desperate they became. After the mystical silver fox killed a few people in the crowd, she was already bathed in blood, as if she was wearing a blood-red battle robe. She laughed loudly and said, "Weak, weak. Too weak. I didn't expect that after 900 years the subordinates of Niaoyu the trash would be so weak. Ridiculous, really ridiculous." When everyone heard this, they were furious. They wanted to crush the mystical silver fox into powder immediately, but this kind of thought could only be thought of. None of them could keep up with the speed of the mystical silver fox, and no one could break the defense of the mystical silver fox's golden tail. Now the mystical silver fox was fighting with them in close combat with her own speed, and she had the golden tail to protect her body. It could be said that she was the only one who could hit others and no one else could hit her. There were many people in the Japanese cultivation world and there were many masters, but they lacked a top master who could entangle her. In the past, even if the Chinese cultivation world had encircled and suppressed the mystical silver fox, it was all thanks to the reincarnated Wisdom King who had entangled the mystical silver fox with his own strength, so that she could not exert her speed. Only then could the others calmly set up a magic formation and cast magic, and finally break her almost invincible heavenly fox real body. At this time, the Japanese cultivators knew how earth-shattering the battle between Suyi more than 900 years ago was, and how unprecedented the battle in the Chinese cultivation world 1,000 years ago was. These two battles between China and Japan were all because of one person. Only when they were facing this big devil did they understand how powerful their predecessors were more than 900 years ago. They could actually seal the mystical silver fox. However, what shocked them the most was that 1,000 years ago, the Chinese cultivation world had been able to defeat the mystical silver fox with a complete soul and the heavenly fox real body. How strong would he have to be to defeat such a powerful figure who was like a god? The Japanese cultivators were almost desperate. After killing a few more people, the mystical silver fox instantly broke out of the crowd's encirclement. She looked disdainfully at the Japanese cultivators who had almost lost their confidence in fighting and sneered, "A bunch of good-for-nothings. Killing you is a waste of time and energy. Hurry up and get help. I won't fight with people who are eager to die." After that, her figure flashed and disappeared in an instant, leaving only a strange shadow with 7 golden tails dancing constantly. She slowly disappeared in the thunderstorm night. With a rumble of thunder, the lightning illuminated the world in an instant. The cultivators of all sects in Japan looked around and saw the corpses of their friends everywhere. Although there were still many surviving cultivation masters, their faces were ashen and their eyes were filled with fear. Even a proud person like Isi Chuyun couldn't help murmuring in a low voice in despair, "It's over. I've lost my spirit. How can I fight again?" At this time Isi Xinguang was also covered in blood, but most of it was the blood that had been splashed by the mystical silver fox. At this time he no longer had a carefree look. Instead, his face was ferocious and nervous. He said in a deep voice, "The experts of all sects haven't arrived yet. When everyone is here, we'll set up the formation and fight again. We may not lose." Zichuyin shook his head and said with a bitter smile, "It's useless. There's already a devil in their hearts. No matter how hard they fight, it's useless. Look at it yourself. Do they dare to face the mystical silver fox again? Even if all the experts came, they would be shocked by the horrible scene in front of them and be afraid. Lord Xinguang, we lack a lion. If a lion led a flock of sheep, it could also defeat a flock of lions led by a sheep." At this time, the lowest cultivation quotient of the cultivators of all sects in Japan was at the top level of Yang spirit. Could be said that there were many masters here. The number of masters was higher than that of the Chinese cultivation world. However, at this time the number could not defeat the quality. A mystical silver fox had completely defeated them. Asi Xinguang looked at the field, only to see that almost everyone on the field was standing still, as if they were walking corpses. The mystical silver fox had completely destroyed their self-confidence. Among them, the monk soldiers of the Pure Land True sect were especially obvious. At the beginning, the momentum of this group of monk soldiers was extremely strong, and they looked arrogant. But at this time they were like clay puppets and their eyes were empty. Asi Xinguang's heart was filled with grief. He couldn't help shouting, "Is God going to destroy our Japanese cultivation world? Lord Xinguang." At this time, a shout came from the side. Asi Xinguang turned his head and saw an old monk covered in blood coming over. The old monk was wearing a red cassock and had a solemn face. It was Kaisai Hikaryuni of Jinyan Tantrism. Asi Xinguang saw that although Kaisai Hikaryuni looked tired, there was no depression and despair between his eyebrows. He didn't dare to neglect him. He immediately saluted and said, "It turns out to be Master Kaisai Hikaryuni. Why are you here? If anything happens to you, who will lead the Jinyan Tantrism to continue moving forward?" Kaisai Hikaryuni sighed and returned the salute. "Amitabha, how can there be an intact egg when the nest is overturned? Lord Xinguang, let's not talk about this. In the face of a great disaster, we should be more sincere and united. You are the pillar of our cultivation world. You should support the situation." Asi Xinguang sighed heavily and said, "The situation is hopeless and I have no choice." Kaisai Hikaryuni's face suddenly changed. He stretched out his hand to slap Asi Xinguang and shouted, "Kill. As the leader of the ISE Shinto, how can you be so decadent? Are we going to sit still and wait for death? If we all think that there is no hope, then we might as well break all our fangs here." Kaisai Hikaryuni's voice came in waves in the dead silence of the rainy night, causing many cultivators to raise their heads. Asi Xinguang was also shocked by Kaisai Hikaryuni's shout. He immediately bowed down solemnly and said, "Thank you for your advice, Master. I understand." With that, he shouted at the crowd, "Everyone, it's too early to determine victory or defeat. Since our predecessors could seal the mystical silver fox once 900 years ago, we can still do it now. 1,000 years ago, the mystical silver fox could still be defeated when she was at her strongest. This shows that she is not invincible. Now she is arrogant and will definitely suffer. We must have a way to defeat her." The Japanese were the group of people who could withstand repression and torture the most in the world. Their endurance was the best in the world. This sentence shocked everyone's hearts and they cheered up one after another. Many cultivators cheered each other up and encouraged each other. Se Xinguang and Kaisai Hikaryuni breathed a sigh of relief when they saw this scene. The Japanese cultivation sects had never been so sincere and united as they were in front of them. Everyone shared a common enemy, gave up the idea of sects and helped and supported each other. Kaisai Hikaryuni sighed and said, "That's right." However, Isi Chuyun said rudely, "Master Kaisai Hikaryuni, forgive me for being presumptuous. If we could defeat the mystical silver fox by inspiring our morale, we would have won just now." For a moment, Isi Chuyun's words immediately pulled Kaisai Hikaryuni and Isi Xinguang, the two leading figures in the Japanese cultivation world, into the cruel and cold reality. Yes, how can we deal with the mystical silver fox? Chapter 838. The mystical silver fox fought in and out of the crowd. Her whole body was bathed in blood, but she was not injured at all. When she returned to the courtyard, she could not hide her complacency. The resentment that had been sealed for 900 years was finally exhaled at this time. She looked at Lu Feier triumphantly and said, "Well? Are these people still making noise?" Lu Feier looked at the mystical silver fox as if she was worshipping a god. She shook her head and said, "Stop it, stop it." The mystical silver fox laughed and said, "These people are just clowns. If it weren't for the fact that I didn't have the real body of the heavenly fox 900 years ago, how could they have had the chance to ride on my head?" At this time, Lu Feier's fate had been tightly tied with that of the mystical silver fox. She couldn't help worrying about her. Her face was full of timidity. She asked tentatively, "But aren't you afraid that if you give them time to breathe now, they can accumulate strength in the end?" The mystical silver fox sneered and said, "By themselves? A bunch of people who thought highly of themselves. In the era of bird feathers, there were a few monks and yin-yang masters who had some ability, but now, humph, a bunch of idiots who only know how to sleep and enjoy the fruits of our ancestors' labor. Lu Feier listened to her domineering words, but she didn't know that these Japanese cultivators had almost defeated the Chinese cultivation world. If they hadn't met the reincarnated Wisdom King, they wouldn't have been defeated so miserably today. As soon as they saw the mystical silver fox, they became soft. However, these people were definitely not pushovers. Many of them were master-level experts no matter where they were placed. Many of them were even grandmasters. However, in the eyes of the mystical silver fox, these masters were all vulnerable and worthless. How confident and domineering they were. Lu Feier swallowed her saliva and asked, "Then, what are you going to do next?" Mystical silver fox snorted and said, "Wait." "Wait." Lu Feier blinked. The mystical silver fox nodded and said, "Yes, wait." Lu Feier asked in confusion, "Wait for what?" The mystical silver fox smiled and said, "Wait for them to find reinforcements." Lu Feier was shocked. "There are so many of them and they have reinforcements?" The mystical silver fox snorted and said, "There are hundreds of millions of believers in Japan. It's not surprising that there are a few masters. However, for experts like them who cultivated their bodies and not their lives, it would be a waste no matter how many came. Why don't I ask them to come together so that I don't have to run around? I want to capture them all in one fell swoop." There was one more thing that the mystical silver fox didn't say. 900 years ago, the Japanese cultivation world came out in full force and sealed her here. Now, she wanted to take revenge here with her own hands and realize a 900-year reincarnation. Lu Feier hesitated for a moment. She didn't want to see the mystical silver fox die because of her arrogance. In that case, her little life would be lost with her. She thought for a moment, summoned up her courage and said, "Do they have any particularly powerful magic weapons or killing skills or something like that?" The mystical silver fox was stunned when she heard this. She couldn't help laughing out loud. "I'm not afraid." Lu Feier couldn't help asking again, "Then?" The mystical silver fox interrupted her impatiently and said coldly, "Their only chance of winning now is to quickly go to all the major cultivation sects in China to ask for help. Otherwise they have no chance of winning at all." Lu Feier's eyes widened. "They went to the cultivation sects in our country to ask for help? Then will the cultivation sects in our country agree?" The mystical silver fox sneered and snorted. She gritted her teeth and said, "They'd better agree so that I won't have to run around and settle all the old and new grudges here." Lu Feier looked at the mystical silver fox with fear on her face and complained in her heart, "Oh my God, she's a lunatic. It's okay for her to provoke the cultivators of Japan alone, but she even wants to provoke the cultivators of China together. It's over. It's over. I'm dead this time." But soon her heart skipped a beat. She suddenly thought of something and thought to herself, "By the way, will Li Jiandong come? Will he be a match for the mystical silver fox?" Lu Feier was thinking about it here. At this time, Ise Xinguang and the others were discussing the countermeasures. All the sects present here had elected a leader. Everyone gathered together to discuss how to deal with the mystical silver fox. Someone proposed to take out the 3 national magic treasures of Japan to deal with the mystical silver fox, but as soon as this proposal was put forward, it was rejected with a sneer. Why didn't Yasuo Abe and the others use these 3 great magic treasures to deal with the mystical silver fox? The reason is very simple, because it's useless. The 3 great magic treasures of Japan were the Yasakani no Kagami, the Kusanagi no Kagami, and the 8-foot mirror. Among them, the political and religious functions of the Yasakani no Kagami and the 8-foot mirror were obviously greater than the practical functions of fighting. Among the 3 great magic treasures, the only one with combat power was the Kusanagi no Kagami. The main reason why the Kusanagi no Kagami could be called the first of the 3 great magic treasures of Japan was that Susanoo had used it to cut off the head of Yamada no Orochi. But was it really cut by Susanoo? According to the legends written by the Japanese themselves, even if Susanoo had killed it, he had taken a lot of good wine and made Yamada no Orochi drunk before he did it. It could be seen that Susanoo, the sea god of Japan, did not dare to cause trouble for Yamada no Orochi at all. Even if the Kusanagi no Kagami in his hand was a divine weapon, its power was extremely limited. The cultivators of Japan had read all the Chinese classics. Naturally, they knew that no matter in ancient times or in the feudal era, cultivators had never done anything like getting a demon drunk and then cutting off its head. This was too cowardly. The people of Chinese disdained to do such a thing. They had always greeted with the powerful magic treasures in their hands. After a while of magic, the world would be quiet. On the divine land of China, there were countless treasures and rare beasts. What kind of terrible magic treasures could they not have? But what about Japan? It was not easy for the sea god, Susanoo, to refine a great magic treasure, but he still did not dare to face Yamada no Orochi head-on. Thinking about the masters who had killed demons in the Chinese cultivation world for thousands of years, which one of them did not have several powerful magic treasures? Which one of them was not earth-shattering and powerful? Especially Li Yundong, this young man who had 3 or 4 powerful magical weapons by himself, each of which made them envious. Thinking of this, the Japanese cultivators could not help but burst into tears. Damn it! You can't afford to hurt a small country with a narrow land and scarce resources. What's more, now the 3 divine weapons were placed in the Imperial Palace in Tokyo, Japan. If they wanted to take them, they had to report to the Mikado first and get his approval. But if they went at this time, it would be equivalent to telling the Mikado, "Your Majesty, we are incompetent and have been abused by the mystical silver fox. Please take the 3 divine weapons to fight with me." But how could the Mikado not know how powerful these 3 divine weapons were? He would probably be choked in the face with wooden clogs, wouldn't he? F***ck, Susanoo did not dare to face Yamada no Orochi head-on with the Kusanagi no Orochi. Do you dare to face the mystical silver fox with the mystical silver fox who had defeated Yamada no Orochi? Have you eaten something wrong? It was a small matter to be scolded by the Mikado. If this matter spread out, all the sects would not be able to do business. Everyone would disband collectively, wash up and sleep. Therefore, the Japanese cultivation world could not take out the 3 divine weapons even if they were beaten to death. This was asking for trouble. After being denied, someone soon said timidly, "Then let's hurry up and set up the magic formation." But after saying this, the people of the other sects couldn't help but burst into tears again. Damn the magic formation. Didn't you see how many of our people were killed by the mystical silver fox just now? The magic formation was set up by a single sect. Now that many masters have been killed, how can they set up the magic formation? Don't you know the shortcoming theory? The power of the magic formation depends on the person with the lowest strength. Moreover, the cooperation must be extremely tacit. There are many masters here, but they are not on the same path. Do you want to play the magic formation with a temporary motley crew? Do you want to die? Aren't you afraid of the backfire of the magic formation? These words made everyone feel dejected again. Someone said angrily, "We can't do this, we can't do that. Are we going to ask the Chinese to be merciful and help us destroy the mystical silver fox?" After saying this, someone sneered and said, "Then we might as well cut our bellies together." However, Ise Xinguang and Kaisai Hikaryuni looked at each other. Their eyes lit up at the same time and they blurted out, "This is feasible." Everyone was shocked. Was it feasible to cut their bellies open? 2 bosses calmed down. However, Kaisai Hikaryuni put his palms together and said seriously, "I mean, it's feasible to ask for help from the people of China." When everyone heard this, there was a sudden uproar. What kind of joke was this? They had just come back from China with their faces covered in dirt. Now they were going to beg them in a humble manner? No, this was absolutely not possible. They were all proud and arrogant. How could they bear such a great humiliation? Ise Xinguang knelt in the rain, put his hands on his knees, leaned forward slightly and said with a serious face, "Everyone, now is not the time to care about personal honor or disgrace. We have reached the edge of life and death. Everyone look around. Now that we can let go of our sects, why can't we let go of our racial prejudice?" Everyone felt depressed when they heard this. Who didn't understand this logic? But they had just formed a group to go to China to play dungeons aggressively. At that time they were very rude. Now that they were going to ask for help, would they agree? If they couldn't agree, wouldn't they lose face and fail to accomplish their task? Would they suffer a double loss? Kaisai Hikaryuni was shrewd. He glanced at the expressions on the faces of the leaders of the sects around him and understood what they were worried about. He said, "Benefactors, many of us have been to China before and have sworn never to step into China again in our lives. Therefore it's not suitable for us to go. Why don't we let those cultivators who haven't been there have a try? Even if it's a dead horse, it's better than sitting back and waiting for death, isn't it?" When everyone heard this, their eyes lit up. This was a good idea. They could send the younger generation to go. It wouldn't be shameful for the younger generation to ask the elders for help, would it? Besides, the cultivation world of China is separated by a strip of water. The mystical silver fox came from your side. You can't just sit back and do nothing, can you? If you destroy Japan, do you think you will be able to live a good life? The more these Japanese cultivators thought about it, the more feasible they felt. They clapped their hands and said, "Let's do it." However, after making the decision, they couldn't help but frown. Who should they send? Among the younger generation of the Japanese cultivation world, who could take on such a heavy responsibility? At that moment, someone thought of Abe Naomi, who had just lost his father, and said, "Mr. Naomi, you can go." Se Xinguang subconsciously wanted to object, but he thought that if Abe Naomi went, on the one hand he could get out of this dangerous place, and on the other hand he would be able to complete his reasonable entrustment to Abe. On the other hand, he was indeed the best of the younger generation of Japan. It would not be shameful to send him out. At this time he also said, "I think Tachibana Wakako of Mount Koya can also go." When everyone heard this, they nodded secretly. At this time, Kaisei Hikaryuni clapped his hands and said, "That's settled. Let the two of them go together. It's not good for them to go together. A man and a woman are just right." Everyone promised and scattered. Kaisei Hikaryuni also whispered a few words to the monks around him. After asking them to bring Tachibana Wakako, he fixed his eyes on the deep night. He knew that the cultivation world of China had been entangled for thousands of years. There were endless grievances and old feuds. The relationship between the two sides was complicated and sensitive. This time they had come to ask for help. Could they get what they wanted? Would the Chinese cultivation world send someone? You're tuning in to the Han Lee's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.